Mayor, we're back live and staff have recommenced or re-entered the meeting, but we're still waiting on one public speaker of Ms. Sheenan, but we have James MacDonald in the meeting.
Well done. Thank you, Catherine. That's terrific. Well, we'll resume the meeting and we'll go to hear from Mr. MacDonald. James, can you hear me? Hello, James. No, we're back to square one.
How much longer is this fiasco going to go on?
James,
how
are you
much
there?
Longer?
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Passos. James is with us now. He was just turning his microphone on. We all have problems with that sometimes on Zoom, so I appreciate your patience. Mr. MacDonald, can you hear me? Right.
All right, I'll get Catherine.
Catherine, do you know if I can see Mr. MacDonald?
I can also see him, but I've just messaged him.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Stamoulis.
I've just called Moira. She's still waiting for Catherine to let her in, I think.
All right, well, councillors, I'm in your hands. We don't seem to be able to get either Mr. MacDonald or Moira on at the moment. Should we move on with other items and come back to them when we know for certain that they're both available to speak?
I think
we should defer the whole meeting and meet physically next week.
Excuse me, Councillor Byrne. Mr. MacDonald, of course, is wanting to speak about item 1.
Yeah.
So I think we should do and he emailed myself and a number of other councillors this morning regarding concerns that directly affect the Cooks River Motorboat Club. So I think it'd be important to have him.
You're not Mr. MacDonald, councillor. You're not Mr. MacDonald.
I'll call the meeting.
Can we get this fixed up?
I'll call the meeting to order. Either way, we don't have Mr. MacDonald at the moment, so we'll need to move on. Fortunately, Councillor Hesse, there's a number of mayoral minutes which will need to be considered prior to getting to item 1 on the agenda. So I'll suggest that we move on with that discussion, unless, Catherine, you can tell me that Moira Sheen's now on here.
Moira is not on the line.
Okay, let's move on. Catherine, can I ask you to read out the next item on the agenda? I'm not sure what order the mayoral minutes are tabled in.
Item 15, mayoral minute, Arts Forum.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillors, because there's a number of these resolutions, I won't just be succinct, I won't speak to them, but I'm happy to answer any questions that people have in regards to them. So I'll move that item 15, mayoral minute, Arts Forum. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to the motion or to amend it? No? If not, I'll put that.
Councillor Byrne, I apologise for a slow response. Look, I'll just speak to it. I welcome your motion. I've certainly spoken to a number of venue operators in Marrickville, and I think the general concern there, and I was just looking at how one might add to the, again, sort of add to the words, but the general concern is that the state government doesn't deal well with small business. And of course, almost all the music venues in the inner west and the cultural venues are small by definition. I mean, even including Enmore Theatre for that matter. So I think the real issue here is, and perhaps you could include this in any covering letter, is that the state government, like the feds for that matter, need to be able to deal directly with small business people. Not, when it comes to attending cultural events, people by and large do not go to the Opera House more than once a year, for example, if they're lucky. They go to see live music or an art performance in their local community in the inner west, and these are the venues we have to support. So I'm very much in sympathy with your proposal, but I do think that we need to focus. That's the feedback I've got from the local operators. The state government just doesn't go anywhere near the small guys.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for that. Is there any further discussion, councillors? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against? I presume that's carried unanimously. Is there anyone who wishes to be recorded voting against it?
Yes, I want to go against it because this really mayoral minute means nothing. It just looks good.
Sorry, Councillor Passis, we've already just conducted the vote. So Councillor Passis is against. That has been carried. Next item, King George Park and WestConnex. I'll just ask the Acting General Manager to just outline for us the additional information that we've been provided this afternoon in writing in regards to the funding at King George Park and what it's dedicated to. Liz, are you able to outline that for everybody?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, as I outlined to you in an email earlier this afternoon, that Council did receive $2.875 million in monetary compensation as a result of the occupation by Transport for New South Wales at King George Park. That compensation figure is broken down into effectively three parts. $1.343 million has to be applied by Council as the land manager at King George Park for public recreation at King George Park or other Crown reserves elsewhere in the local government area. It must be used for that purpose. The remaining $1.532 million is for maintenance of the returned lands at King George Park and any other pocket parks along Victoria Road that Council will manage when the Iron Cove link is ultimately completed. And then there was a small residual sum of around $23,000 that were what we call disturbance costs, principally our costs associated with our valuer and early preliminary legal advice. So I guess the overarching advice there is that of that $2.875 million, only $1.343 million is able to be applied for new works at King George Park or any other Crown reserves in the LGA.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. So I'd like to, that's only information that we've received this afternoon. It wasn't in the original brief that Council has received, but that's very helpful to know. And so I'd just like to make an amendment to the resolution. So point 2 would read that we dedicate, instead of 2.875 million, it would be 1.343 million to improving recreational facilities at King George Park. And then the deletion of the words and the public amenities in neighbouring streets, given that the money can't be dedicated to that from that fund. Outside of that, if we could just amend the names of those streets, Catherine, into the reference in point 4 about the streets that we would be writing to. And the reason I'm seeking to do that, councillors, is whilst there's not money in this compensation to fund improvements to amenities in those streets, all of you will be aware, if you've driven past it, how terrible the living conditions are there at the moment. With just about everybody in those streets is living directly abutting the WestConnex construction site leading up to the Iron Cove Bridge. So there's just a huge problem with public amenity in that whole neighbourhood at the moment. So even though those funds won't be available, I still think we should be consulting with those people about what improvements they'd like to see to the streets, some of which WestConnex can pay for, but which we should be advocating for. So I'll make those amendments to make sure that this is in line with the new advice that we've received. And I'm happy to answer any questions that people might have. Does anyone, any discussion? Councillor De Cruz?
Yes, may I speak, Mr Mayor?
I've got Councillor De Cruz first, then Councillor Passis.
Yeah, look, I was just curious, there seems to be a focus on the sporting groups in that area. What impact has there been on the Bay Run? And I think there were kayaks on the foreshore there as well. And I was curious what potential there is to actually expand the open space to compensate for the land that's lost to WestConnex.
I'll put that question to the council officers.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Certainly, we would expect that there will need to be some rerouting of the Bay Run in that particular part of King George Park. With respect to the kayak store, to the best of my knowledge, that will remain unaffected by the acquisition. And in terms of council potentially using the compensation sum for acquisition of new open space, as part of this compensation package, that's not possible at this particular point in time. Should at a later date Transport for New South Wales seek to retain additional land that they had proposed under this arrangement to hand back, there may be additional compensation payable at that particular point in time that could be used for embellishment, but not at this point in time.
Thank you for that. Does that answer your question, Councillor De Cruz?
Yeah.
Beauty. Councillor Passos?
Yes, Mr Mayor, in your enthusiasm to start your campaign for the next council meeting and letters to go out to residents, don't you think you should have done your homework first before you put this Mayoral Minute up? Am I led to believe that if we strike oil in Asheville tomorrow, that all the money we make from the sale of the oil will only be spent in Ashfield? Apart from what's been nominated that has to go into King George's Park, shouldn't those funds go into consolidated revenue? This type of thing has to stop, and I'm expecting more and more leading up to the next council election. This is unacceptable. Your Mayoral Minute was put in on Friday. If I ask for $1,000 for a church, I have to nominate funding, and it's not available. I'm desperately trying to get a fence finished on a pocket park and a shade cloth, and I'm told there's no money in the budget. This cannot continue. This cannot continue. Using ratepayers' funds for re-election campaign, and that's all this is. No thought has gone into this. No information has been sought. No information has been sought. These councillors do not have their own private checkbooks. These things need to be discussed. Needs need to come in first.
Mr Mayor.
Yes. Councillor Stamoulis.
Can I go after Councillor Stamoulis? Thanks.
Got Councillor Stamoulis and Councillor Kiat.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I was quite shocked that almost $3 million came before councillors via a Mayoral Minute. Particularly, we've got our financial statements coming tonight with some quite interesting results on them. Councillors are very well versed and very well focused on our stressed financial situation, and the Mayoral Minute comes forward with $3 million of spending. Now, I have no issue with it being spent in the local area, but I'd at least like to know, here are councillors about to say dedicating $1.343 million to improving recreational facilities at King George's Park. We don't even know what that dollar value is. What if I said to councillors, $450,000 is going to cover the lot quite clearly, quite easily, quite clearly, because we've recently done a lot of the sports amenity there, but an extra $450,000, so you've got $900,000 left to spend. Well, in fact, I don't know, and neither do the rest of the councillors. We don't know whether I'm right or wrong, or whether Councillor Byrne's right, that we dedicate the whole $1.343 million. So it'd be lovely just to get a quick report back so that we show a little bit of financial diligence that, in fact, King George's Park does need that whole $1.343 million, and we have that list of priorities that we can deliver to King George's Park. If it only needs half that, then where does the other half go? I'd like to be a little bit more disciplined in the way that we manage our finances into the future, and it would be nice to get that small report back as a result of item 2. If the whole 1.343 is needed, so be it. If it's not, let's allocate appropriately. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Stamoulis. I think there might be a bit of confusion here. Councillors will have all received the memo quite some time ago about the fact that the council officers have done a good job in securing compensation for the local community in regards to the loss of this land. It's been a long-standing issue that we've all been aware of. And as it turns out, the advice that we were provided at that time didn't quite explain all of the ways that the money would have to be dedicated under the agreement between the New South Wales government and the council. So the resolution before us includes that new information that we've received. It's simply stating that that $1.343 million, which is dedicated under the agreement to King George Park, that we should initiate the consultation on that. And, if there's money left over, I'm happy to go back and try and vary the agreement with the state government, but there's not some surprise that's occurred here. And I would have thought for Balmain Ward councillors such as ourselves, Councillor Stamlis, others might not be as aware. It's just obvious that money that has been secured to compensate the local community for these impacts should be spent in that very local area because of how terrible the impacts have been.
Mr. Mayor, just a question on that. I believe that the acting CEO said King George's Park and other local parks in that area, whereas you've specifically...
Well, let's clarify that. So, Liz, if I can just ask you to talk us all through one more time what the components are of the dedication from the funds to different works.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. The $1.343 million must be applied at either King George Park or other Crown reserves within the local government area.
Thank you, Elizabeth, very much. Thank you for being there.
That's what I'm saying.
So you'd like it to go to a different ground, would you, John?
No, Mr. Mayor, I've said if King George's Park does not need the whole 1.34...
Sorry, Councillor Stamlis, I'm just trying to discern what I understand the rhetorical points that you've made, and I don't...
Point of order, Chair. I'm concerned that this is becoming a discussion between yourself and Councillor Stamlis, and that...
No, I'm just trying to see whether there's an amendment that he's proposing, Councillor Hesse.
Yeah, I think Councillor Stamlis knows the rules well enough to insert an amendment.
Councillor Hesse, are you now the protector, are you?
I'll call the meeting to order.
Protector.
I'll call the meeting to order. There has been no amendment tabled, so I'm going to suggest that we move on with the discussion. Is there anyone else?
I think I'll move an amendment then in that case. I don't think we can dedicate, given what Liz has just told us, I don't think we can override the receipt of that money and dedicate the 1.343 million to King George Park. Because the point is...
Sorry, Councillor De Cruz, I think you're confused. Liz has specified that the 1.343 million needs to be dedicated to King George Park. It can't be spent on anything else other than that, or parks, other Crown lands in the local government area. So if you want to move an amendment to say that we'll consider that it dedicate the 1.343 million to improving recreational facilities at King George Park or other parks in the Crown, other Crown lands in the local government area, and then specify the parks that you're looking at. So you're not just asking the officers to look at every park in the LGA. Fine, I'm happy to accept that amendment, but you need to propose what it is that you'd like them to look at. You can't ask them to look at every park in the whole municipality.
Why, Mr. Mayor? Why?
That's not quite...
There must be some parks on the books that need work.
Councillor Passos, I will adjourn the meeting if you keep interjecting. I'm trying to be patient. It's actually, I know that you object to Zoom meetings. I can tell you chairing them for several hours at a time is also challenging, and you've been injecting yourself into pretty much every conversation that's had so far in the meeting.
Well,
so if
you didn't say anything.
From that, otherwise I will adjourn the meeting.
Well, Mr. Mayor, you didn't say anything to Councillor Hesse when he interjected between you and Councillor...
Sorry, Councillor Passos, if you can't desist, I will adjourn the meeting for 2 minutes.
A question through the chair?
No, sorry, I'll call the meeting to order. So I want to go back to Councillor De Cruz. I'm not seeking to cut off debate. Councillor De Cruz, I'm very open to any amendment you might propose. So do you want to tell me what it is?
Councillor Byrne, I think you're overriding the legal advice, which says that this money can be used on King George Park and other recreation facilities. There's no such thing as, there's no point in saying dedicating it because that's already the legal obligation. So no, sorry, I'm not sure whether your mayoral minute is overriding the legal obligation.
No, it's not at all. I think you're confused. We're not prohibited from spending the entirety of it at King George Park. We're able to spend it at King George Park. That's the one location named in the agreement. Or if we so choose and wanted to propose another park. Now, my preference would be that it would be one nearby. And if you'd like to propose that, I'm happy to look at the options. I have no idea whether improvements to King George Park would cost that amount or not. But it's not inconsistent with the legal advice. at all. So is there another park that you'd like to propose that we include consideration of, Councillor De Cruz? If not, I'll go to Councillor Lockie, who's had a hand up for some time.
Well, my understanding is that we've recently consulted on developer contributions, and we do have a recreation needs study, and which would have a long list of items which need to be funded, and we could actually look at parks in as local as possible to this vicinity.
I'll let you forward the wording of your amendment to the minute taker. I'm happy to consider it. Councillor Lockie?
Yeah, look, I just wanted to suggest perhaps a way forward that addresses the concerns which I agree with, and also seeks to keep the majority of this spending at the areas that are most impacted. And that's just simply, instead of that we dedicate that 1.343 million to King George's Park and specify names of other parks, that we receive a report back from council officers advising how that 1.343 million could be dedicated at King George's Park and our other Crown reserves, with a preference to be given to keeping the spend in the areas affected by WestConnex Stage 3B. I think that addresses both your very valid desire to ensure that the communities that are most impacted by this project are the first to receive the benefit of this compensation funds, but also addresses our responsibilities in terms of good governance and probity to make sure that those needs are examined before the money is actually dedicated. And if I could also ask if you're open to, on points 4 and 5, I've note that the letter and the reports that you're asking for are really, really quite tight in terms of timings. Like point 4 refers to reporting back to an ordinary meeting in October, which is clearly not going to happen now.
Yeah, no, it's because the motion was drafted some time ago. I don't think we should specify a time. We just say report it back to an ordinary meeting.
Yeah, and same with point 5 as well. The report back to an ordinary meeting in November, if you can. Yeah. And if you'd be willing to accept the amendment on
what is it? In
just that
I agree. Yeah, we need to actually send it to the minute taker.
I will do that.
We can't
right
keep
now.
up with amendments that are just given verbally. It's too hard on Catherine, and the rest of us won't know what we're voting on. So, but I'm in principle completely agree.
Great.
Okay, further discussion, councillors.
Councillor Byrne.
Councillor Kiat.
Can I ask a question in relation to point 2? Can I ask of the council officers whether any work has been done to date on how that 1.343 million would be spent?
I'll put that question to the officers.
Thank you, councillors. No, at this particular point in time, as the funds have only recently become available to us, no work has been undertaken as yet. It's the sort of thing that we would typically develop through the capital program in conjunction with our parks planning processes. So nothing yet to date.
Thank you. In relation to point 4, can I ask through the chair, have we done any consultation with these affected residents? And, you know, if we were to do that, would that normally come in a letter through the mayor, or how would we do that consultation?
Typically, most of our parks planning engagement occurs through plan of management processes, where we undertake detailed community engagement as part of a plan of management process. As I understand it, there was certainly a degree of community engagement in the precinct around there when the last amenities block at King George Park was built. But I'm afraid, councillors, that's the extent of my knowledge on the community engagement in that precinct.
Councillor Kiat.
Just the last question. I'm just about point 5, and maybe Councillor Byrne, you can answer this. Is that consistent? It refers to the 2 points.
Yeah, no, that's inconsistent. Yeah, that needs to be amended as well. So it should just read, consults with the clubs listed on their priorities, and following consultation, reports back to an ordinary council meeting.
Right.
Thank you for pointing that out.
I think Councillor Hesse had his hand up.
Councillor Hesse.
Yes, I have one amendment or suggested amendment. It's one word in point 4, replacing the word mayor with council. I think, to speak to Councillor Passis's early comments, I don't think we can see these things as the role of the mayor. This is a council process, and I think it would be better if it was just council and neutral. And I would like that to have council, not mayor.
Any further discussion, councillors?
I'd just like to...
Mayor, may I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
2 questions of the acting CEO. Liz, do we have a current plan of management for King George Park?
Good question, Councillor. I wouldn't know that. I'd have to take that question on notice, I'm afraid.
Okay, because I assume we do, and I assume the plan of management for King George Park would have a lot more than $1.3 million of work in it, which I would suspect would form the basis of what we could do with that money. I'm in support of this resolution. I do believe councillors are very keen to be comma moving this evening. And I just think that we should be starting to accept the money, the conditions that it's given, and get on with the process.
Thanks, councillor. There's no further discussion. I'll just make a very brief right of reply. Look, we were all informed that this money was made available through the good work of the officers. I got off my bum and went and consulted with the local clubs, and am very well aware of all the impacts that, the very serious impacts on people's quality of life in the surrounding streets, and so brought forward a motion to get us to actually engage with all of those users of the park about how this funding should be spent. And it is required to be spent there or somewhere else if someone wants to propose a different location. So I see this as an unambiguously positive step. I've tried to amend in positive suggestions from other councillors, and I'm happy to amend in Councillor Lockie's new point 2. But to be honest, you know, if you've got an idea about something that you want to propose at council, then bring a motion forward rather than having a crack at me for bringing forward a positive suggestion about money that our staff had achieved. So, no, sorry, Councillor Passis. And if anyone feels too uncomfortable with what's proposed to vote for it, well, fair enough. I don't think the users of the ground will agree with you, and I don't think the residents down there will either. But that's obviously of everyone's volition. So I'll now put the motion. All those in favour, please raise their hands and keep them raised. In support, I have Councillors Stamoulis, De Cruz, Lockie, McKenna, Iskander, Drury, Raciti. Councillor Steer, are you in support or against?
In support.
And Councillor Steer. And all those against, please raise your hands. Against the Councillors Hesse. Councillor Passis, are you against?
I'm against.
Yeah. Councillors Hesse, Passis, Kiat. Sorry, Councillor Macri, were you in support or against?
I'll support, Chair.
Yeah. Okay, that's been carried with Councillors Hesse, Passis and Kiat against. Now, I can see that Moira Sheehan's now back in the call again through Catherine's excellent work. Catherine, do you think we'll be able to get Moira now without the same problems as before?
I'm hopeful.
Let's give it a go. Moira, can you hear me? God. Moira, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh my God, I can't believe it.
What a saga. Nice to hear from you. You've got 3 minutes.
Okay, so look, when I saw this, in fact, what I first saw was the Sydney Morning Herald, and I thought, oh, that's media, okay? So, and I mean, I'll declare a bit of an interest here because I do a lot of training with local councils on a regular basis. And there's all sorts of issues come up in terms of access to information, codes of conduct, legislation, etc. So it concerned me because there seemed to be confusion. I tried to then look at the council website and find if there was a policy and a procedure around this issue, and I couldn't find anything. I mean, there were policies around councillor social media, dealing with the media, etc., but not this. So it's quite clear that the New South Wales legislation in terms of public records, yes, everything that is on your email, on your council devices, whether it's emails or correspondence or whatever, is a public record. However, access to those public records, now, and depending on what they are, is something, particularly if it goes to an individual councillor, it's something that is not automatically able to be accessed by just anybody, including staff or whatever, unless permission is given or there's some legal issue going on, an investigation. So that's quite clear, and I've checked that out with LGNSW. The other bit that concerned me was the potential for somebody to be able to hack into the system. So look, my sense of it would be that there needs to be a clear procedure about how any correspondence, whether it comes in by mail, email or whatever, into a councillor, there should be a clear procedure around how that is managed, who can access it and under what circumstances. The other one then is whether, and whether anybody is actually able to hack into, and as you know, one of the recent Auditor General reports, when they were looking at the review of local councils, that issue of cybersecurity and, if you like, sophistication and understanding around IT and so on was not at the level that might be desirable or needed in our current environment. So it would be really good, I think, to get somebody in to have a look and see what the security is like, and then check that out and make sure it's all up to date. Because it's the kind of thing, if these things sweep around as rumours and perception, they can get out of hand and create unnecessary problem both for councillor staff and people in the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Moira. Mr. McDonald, are you on the line now?
Yes, I am, and I have just been able to come back on.
Oh, beauty. Well, I can hear you very clearly. How are you going?
Good. I have no video though.
That's all right. Your voice is loud and clear.
Right. Thank you. It's just, I don't know what's happened. I had video, no voice. Now I have voice, no video.
Well, this is the better alternative. Over to you.
Okay. My name is Jim McDonald. I'm the president of the Tempe Basin Motorboat Association. The association is incorporated and has as its main objective the preservation and restoration of timber motorboats. We are in the process of affiliating with the Men's Shed. We have a diverse membership in excess of 50 men and women, ranging in ages from 20 to over 80. The Plan of Management and Master Plan initially recommended closing the boatyard, but has now been amended to allow a boatyard amongst other uses and to enter into a long-term lease or short-term licence. I would like to make these general points. Restoration of a boat can take between 2 and 5 years. Restored boats need ongoing maintenance in the yard every 2 years. The boatyard has been community run for more than 90 years with a boat club associated with it for 100. Boats currently being restored include Mayuna, a 1921 river cruiser, Gilo, a 1949 Halverson, Gurewin, a 1949 G-class workboat, Nor'easter, a 1949 cruiser, and the Bounty, a 1930s Botany Bay prawn boat. Several boats from the 1940s are moored in the Tempe Basin, having been restored in the yard. Tempe Basin is well known by the local community, with the old boats moored in it being a local landmark. The boatyard has coexisted with the local community throughout its long history. It is the only community-based boatyard of its type operating. The boat ramp at Whole Beach Avenue is a public boat ramp, but is difficult The yard is maintained and operated by volunteers. It operates in a similar manner to a men's shed, with regular meetings and discussions regarding boat restoration and ship repair skills. It allows a transfer of knowledge to ensure the marine heritage can be preserved and skills passed on. The yard is run as a not-for-profit yard to enable as wide possible access and affordable key elements in encouraging restoration. The association is disappointed it was not consulted in the development of the plan of management and master plan. It was not until after the plan of management was adopted that we became aware of it. Throughout the first half of 2019, we were engaged in ongoing discussions on areas of improvement desired by council. We carried out substantial work removing redundant sheds and developing alternative work methods. We developed an alternative means of scaffolding and purchased materials with the aim of installing it. In conjunction with this, we intended to demolish temporary structures built over the boats being restored. Ongoing discussions ceased with changes of personnel. We understand the need for improvement in the way we operate and look forward to renewed engagement. The onset of COVID has meant that working bees were cancelled and members' access restricted. The association has long sought to be granted tenure. The lack of tenure has meant substantial improvements haven't proceeded due to the uncertainty that expenditure would be wasted should no tenure eventuate. During our time, we have erected new fences, installed electricity and water reticulation, as well as carrying out extensive removal of derelict sheds. We've invested in equipment, including to move boats and in temporary buildings for club rooms and a workshop. The Tempe Basin has many boats in it that were restored in the yard. Our members are not wealthy and could not afford to do so otherwise. Boat restoration.
May I move a 1 minute extension of time?
Seconded.
Thank you. I've nearly finished. Boat restoration is time consuming and expensive, but when finished, provides the community with a floating heritage that reflects the harbour nature of Sydney and the marine heritage of Botany Bay and the Cooks River. If council were minded to allow us to continue as leaseholders over the yard, we would be ready, willing and able to carry out work on the yard to ensure it remains a valuable asset for the preservation of historic boats. Should the boatyard close, it is almost certain there will be a loss of marine heritage. I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask Mr. McDonald a question?
Yeah, sorry. Oh, okay, Councillor Passis, is it? Yes, that's not the normal course of events, but I'll give you some leeway. Go ahead.
Mr. McDonald, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I'm Councillor Passis. I'm not aware of what's been going on down there. Does your group receive any grants or have ever received any grants from anywhere?
No, we don't. We haven't been able to get grants because most grants need tenure, and because we haven't had tenure, we aren't able to get them.
Oh, okay, then, well, I just thought I'd let you know I fully support what you and your mates are doing, and if there's anything I can do to help, I'm here to do it.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, thank you. That concludes the public forum, so we'll return to the normal agenda. Catherine, can I ask you to let us know which mayoral minute we're up to now?
We're up to item 17, West Tigers Leisure.
Thank you. Councillors, this one's particularly uncomplicated. I've received correspondence from West Tigers seeking a collaboration between the council and West Tigers in regards to leisure programs, and the resolution simply seeks to convene a meeting between representatives of the club and representatives of the council to discuss whether there is room for cooperation. So I'll move that way. I presume that it's uncontroversial and we don't need to spend too much time on it. Councillor Lockie?
Yeah, look, I just wanted to ask a question on this. Given we already have, where am I going? We already have an existing relationship with Belgravia Leisure, and that's obviously at Enmore and Petersham Pools, and we are, as I understand it, due to go enter contract review with that next year. I'm a little concerned about us, even though this is a fairly innocuous motion on the face of it, about us convening meetings through West Tigers with that organisation when we already have a pre-existing relationship. And also in terms of, you know, as I understand it, we've built up a lot of capacity internally, particularly with the opening of the Ashfield Aquatic Centre, in being able to run a lot of these kinds of programs ourselves. So I guess I'd just like to put a question through you, Chair, to the council officers about what the implications of this could be for those other contractual arrangements and also our own service offerings.
You mean the implications of the meeting?
Well, yes. Like, why would we have this meeting when we've got all that other stuff happening?
Right. Okay, I'll put that question to the officers.
Thank you, councillors. I think councillors are well aware of the strategic review that staff have been undertaking with respect to the operation of Annette Kellerman and Fanny Durack aquatic centres. And I'd expect a report to be presented to council certainly before the end of this year, could be as soon as the next meeting. I'm a little unclear on the business model that's being proposed here between West Tigers and Belgravia, but it seems to be that there's some that they're looking for aligned services to operate within the aquatics area, with the presumption that this some sort of an arrangement would enable both parties, Tigers and Belgravia, to gain access into some form of amenities owned by council. So I think, as Councillor Lockie's rightly pointed out, the Inner West Council Aquatic Services currently leads the way in this sector across a range of program areas, and we certainly don't believe there to be any sort of current service gap or expertise areas where a third-party contract like this would exist. But I guess on face value, I'm certainly happy to sit down with West Tigers and Belgravia and have that discussion.
Could I ask a question?
Sorry, councillors, just before we keep going, I just want to try to bring the debate to a bit of a point. As you can see from the resolution, there is no suggestion in the resolution that the council needs to do anything at all. So the question is, is it a good thing for us to respond to this correspondence by offering a meeting or not? If you think that there's no need, that the meeting's too harmful to undertake, then that's fine. But I don't want to, we shouldn't extrapolate into the motion that which isn't there. There's no recommendation here that we do anything other than invite them to come and meet with us. And I would point out that both West Ashfield and West Tigers are one of the largest not-for-profit community institutions in the Inner West. Councillor Kiat.
Can I first ask a question? The question is, through the chair, would it normally require a resolution of the council to respond to a piece of correspondence?
Well, sorry, councillor, that's such a broad question that you'll have to, I guess you're putting that question to me, given that outgoing correspondence to major stakeholder organisations would come from me. They've written to me, Councillor Kiat, and rather than offering them a meeting, I've brought a resolution to council to bring the matter out into the public domain. And so your question is, would it normally require a resolution? No, but one way to interpret that is that I've deliberately brought it to your attention because I want you to be informed about it and to get a report back. So that you have
well, I'm happy to speak on it then. Look, we've just heard from the acting CEO that we don't have any service gaps, and indeed we know that we're undertaking a review of the current operations that are within Belgravia's that are outsourced to Belgravia that could be brought in-house. Belgravia is now seeking to insert themselves into our existing rec centres that are run by in-house by council, and the cover for doing that is slapping on the West Tigers logo. So it's a very novel approach to trying to privatize more council services. And I have no idea why council as a body should endorse the mayor having a meeting with the West Tigers Leisure.
Sorry, councillor. I'll just call you to order. I usually try to give you as much leeway with your left-wing rhetoric as possible. But to suggest that this motion proposes privatisation of council services is just absurd. It is a motion that council agree to meet with a stakeholder or not. Could you just address that rather than openly lying in the public
Point
domain.
of order, Chair. Point of order. That's quite I would draw your attention to the code of conduct. You have a.
I'll call you to order, Councillor Hesse. What I'll do.
I'm sorry, Councillor, but you have a certain conduct of Councillor Fiat, which is quite out beyond the code of conduct.
5 minutes. The meeting is adjourned. The meeting
I'll
is
be
adjourned.
taking that matter up, and I'll be seeking to dissent from the chair.
The meeting is adjourned. Okay, we'll resume the meeting.
Chair, I would ask you to withdraw your comments about Councillor Kiat.
And what comments were they, Councillor? That he alleged that there's a motion before us for privatisation, which is just plainly incorrect.
You used language which was, in my view, potentially, well, it was quite unacceptable, and I ask you to withdraw. You know what you said, Councillor Byrne. Let's not play around. I just ask you to withdraw those imputations immediately.
I'll withdraw them, Councillor Hesse, and I'll ask for your cooperation and assistance. I've had several text messages from people who are listening to the meeting so far who are remarking what extraordinary levels of patience and good humour that I'm displaying in trying to chair this meeting, quite ineffectively, obviously, but I don't think it's just my fault. So I would ask for your assistance and that of everybody else's in ensuring that we can get through the business papers, because at the moment it's pretty bloody slow going. So I'll go to the next speaker.
You've withdrawn those comments, have you, Councillor Byrne?
I just said that, Councillor Hesse.
I think I was in the middle.
And I'll ask Councillor Kiat if in return he would withdraw the imputation that there's any privatisation proposed in the motion, but I won't hold him to account right now. Let's just move on with the business.
Mr. Mayor,
is there anyone else who wishes
I was
to
in
speak?
the middle of my speech.
Sorry, I'll just call the meeting to order. I'll adjourn the meeting again if there's any more interjections. It could be a very long meeting tonight. I'll keep adjourning the meeting until people allow me to actually chair. Councillor Kiat has the floor. I'll ask him to resume his contribution, but refrain from lying about privatisation.
Right. So what this letter sets out is how Belgravia wants to sell more of its services to council in areas where council is already providing the services. Call it what you want. They followed with interest the progress of the facility development at Ashfield Aquatic Centre, and they clearly want to insert themselves there. Now, I'm very happy that Ashfield Aquatic Centre is run in-house it's a public asset, and it's run by council. I'd like to see the same, and I've said on many occasions, I'd like to see the same at Kellerman, at Petersham, and at Enmore. I think it would be of great benefit to council. I think some of the advice that we've received suggests the same. And I think, for example, with the opening of Ashfield, we now have a membership across 3 of our 5 pools, excluding the pools that are run by Belgravia. I think that's a great thing.
Chair, point of order.
Yes, Councillor Macri.
Councillor Kiat is talking about something completely separate to what this motion is about.
That's true.
Can Councillor Kiat stop spruiking what he wants to do with the other pools and stick to what we have here in front of us? Please.
Okay, Councillor Kiat, I'll just respectfully ask, the motion is for a meeting. That's all it is. So I'd ask you to address your comments, which are clearly against the meeting, to explain why the meeting would be so damaging.
I will address that. So it's not separate at all.
And I'll just, sorry, Councillor Kiat, I'll just call you to order just for a moment. I'll just ask the minute takers. There was a minute 58 left on Councillor Kiat's clock. I know we've interrupted a few times, but the clock's not actually moving. So can I just ask where we're up to on his time?
1 minute and 2 seconds.
Okay, thanks. If we could resume the time, Councillor Kiat, if you could address the motion, please.
So you protest too much. It obviously is about how Belgravia wants to run more services in our pools. They specifically mention Ashfield Aquatic. They specifically mention that they're already operating at 2 of our pools, Petersham and more. So I think it is really important that we recognize what this is. I think it's important as well that we recognize this is a letter that's gone directly to the mayor. If they're interested in talking to our staff about offerings that they have, they can talk to our staff. That's the normal process. I really don't see why this needs to go to the mayor. And really, what it looks like is Belgravia knows that we're not interested in privatization, and so they've decided, well, let's have a partnership with West Tigers. That's what it seems like to me. But it really has nothing to do with the West Tigers. And it's really about Belgravia. And it's really about them trying to get their hands on more of our services.
Thanks very much, Councillor Kiat. Thanks very much, Councillor Kiat. Your time has expired. I'll just call the meeting to order. Councillor Passis.
Yes, I just would like to ask a question. I don't have a problem with people wanting to go and speak to you, and if they have any initiative, whatever, not a problem at all. But this type of thing, if they're looking at this, wouldn't this have to go out to tender?
Of course, Councillor Passis. Well, I don't know what you're referring to. because there is no request from them other than for a meeting. But yes, of course, any partnership of any size would have to go out to tender, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much for that. Okay, councillors, well, we're up to the second
Councillor
one.
Steer wants to speak.
Councillor Steer.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I oppose this minute and I endorse the comments of my colleague, Councillor Kiat. If there is nothing stopping West Tigers talking to Belgravia at any time, I don't see why they have to involve council until they have something that they want to put as a proposal to the council. And so far we have seen nothing that is a concrete proposal from either or both of them about what they would like to do with the leisure centres that council has built and rents out to them, to Belgravia Leisure, which is indeed a private company that has been contracted to manage Annette Kellerman and Fanny Durack pools. And they're the only privately managed pools in this area. They already provide a wide range of services, including a creche, a gym, organised classes. You all know I'm a big fan of aquarobics, and there are many things that Belgravia is already doing. As both of these venues are the smallest pools in the whole area, it is hard to see what value that West Tigers could add, because these venues are already taken up with a wide program of activities during all the opening hours. It really seems to me that it's a commercial deal which has nothing to do with council, and that councillors should be briefed on rather than it being presented in a mayoral minute. This is not an appropriate way to present such a proposal or a proposition or an idea or concept to us. If they want to have a chat, let them have a chat amongst themselves.
Sorry, I just asked the minute takers just to identify on the screen the clock so that I can work out how long Councillor Steer has to go. I can't see the clock.
I've got a minute and 2 seconds.
Thank you. Yep,
yes.
I can see it now.
And if they want to if they want to talk to each other, they can do that on a commercial basis. There's nothing stopping them. They're both private organisations that are not related to council, and then they can come up with a proposal. The councillors may, after a proper briefing, then fully decide on doing this. To agree with this minute would appear to be endorsing something that we don't actually know what the proposal is, what benefit of it is to council, what benefit of it is to residents, and how it would enhance Fanny Durack and Annette Kellerman pools. So I am voting against this motion, and I hope that all the other councillors do too. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Steer. I think there must be some confusion. I don't know if everyone's actually been able to read the attachment. Sorry, just a moment. Sorry to insert myself into the discussion, but I think that there's actually some confusion here. I just ask everyone to look at page 2 of the letter, which actually lists the initiatives that are specifically being proposed by West Tigers. So there's a school holiday clinic, utilise Inner West Council facilities as a holiday clinic location for community. These could be promoted as an additional benefit on membership packages. So it sounds like an in-kind contribution. NRL League Stars after school program. League Stars run before and after school for primary school age children 4 to 6 weeks. The program, which already exists, is suitable for all abilities. So that's disabled kids as well, with a focus on practicing fundamental movement skills and having a blast with friends. Then there's the Kari Indigenous Pathways Camp, which is pending availability and timing in 2021. Various activities can be moved from the West Tigers headquarters to or to council facility, and activation at Ashfield Aquatic Centre. So now that the pool's open, they're offering to invite all of the West Tigers members to come down and check out the pool. So I'm sorry to be insistent about this, but there's a disconnect between the reality of what is actually in writing and being proposed for a meeting agenda and the frankly over-the-top rhetoric that's come from Councillors Giat and Councillors Steer. So if anyone wants to speak against it, they could just let us know which part of the after-school care programs and the disability programs they are so vociferously opposed to that it's not worth having a meeting about. Councillor De Cruz?
I'm just a little confused about West Tigers Leagues Club, which is, I presume, a licensed club, their affiliation with and their process here, because any organisation is open to hiring our facilities at any time. And I just don't quite understand why these people are given such a high profile in a mayoral minute. And I guess if you're seeking permission from councillors to speak to a licensed club and give them privileged access to our pool facilities and recreation facilities, I'm not sure I can support that either.
Sorry, Councillor De Cruz, I'll call you to order. I'm not seeking permission to give anyone special access to anything. I'll ask you to withdraw that remark. I've received correspondence from a local institution. I've tabled it at council and suggesting that council officers rather than politicians meet with the stakeholder who's requested engagement with council. So to suggest that that's offering special access to anyone is insulting, and I'll ask you to withdraw that comment.
Councillor De Cruz said if.
Sorry, Councillor De Cruz, I'll ask you to withdraw the imputation that I was seeking to do something corrupt. Please withdraw.
No, I don't know if it's corrupt. I'm just
okay.
I'm concerned about the affiliation with the licensed club
for a period of
and the perception that
the meeting is
licensed
adjourned.
club gives exclusive access to our facilities.
The meeting is adjourned for 5 minutes. Let's see if we can, when we come back the next time, whether we can get on with the business without defamatory imputations. All right, councillors, we'll resume the meeting. I won't insist further on my disagreement with Councillor De Cruz. I really found that quite insulting, but let's just move on. I'll withhold my right to object to it subsequently.
Mr. Mayor.
No, sorry, I'll call the meeting to order. Now, councillors, I think it's fair to say that this meeting has been difficult to chair. So sometimes that dynamic comes out. It is very difficult on Zoom. I'm not going to try to conduct a meeting in which there's no order at all. And so I will continue to adjourn the meeting, and the meeting may be discontinued if we're not able to just make sure that we can conduct it properly and get on with the business. So I'll go back to Councillor De Cruz to conclude her remarks. I've asked her to desist from that sort of reference, and I'll ask her to address the motion, which is what I've requested several times. Councillor De Cruz.
My concern is about a relationship with a licensed club having access to our facilities. I mean, I don't quite understand why this is.
Sorry, Councillor De Cruz. Sorry, Councillor De Cruz. I think you're confused again. West Tigers are not a licensed club. They're a not-for-profit community organisation. Now, they are affiliated to West Ashfield, but they are not a licensed premises. They're not a club. They don't have a club licence. It's a completely different entity. They're a professional sporting organisation. So just, you didn't understand that, so just so you understand.
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem. We don't really know what this organisation is that's come to us with a proposal.
Okay.
May I ask a question?
Yes, well, I think you've already spoken, haven't you, Councillor Passos? You there?
Mr. Mayor,
Sorry.
I think the problem has stemmed from, this is the first time you've put up a mayoral minute. Do you always put up mayoral minutes when you meet with people?
No, but when I think it's appropriate, Councillor Passos, for other councillors to be informed of anything that someone raises with me, quite frequently I suggest that they write to all councillors, because I think that's a good educative process as well as a transparent one. So I'm sorry that people are offended that I've tabled.
Wouldn't we be informed of the outcome of your meeting anyway?
Yes, that's my intention. That's the reason I've tabled the motion, so that there would be a report that would come back to council.
All I'm saying is I've never seen a mayoral minute before you meet someone. I thought we might get something after you've met with them.
Point of order, Mayor. Can we please have a little bit more discipline around asking questions, councillors? We really do need to get through the agenda. There are substantial matters to be considered.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. That wasn't a point of order. That was a speech.
No, that's true. You're a
Chair.
I'll call the meeting to order.
Add one at that.
I'll call the meeting to order, and I will adjourn the meeting again if people can't desist from interjecting. So, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the motion?
Yes, Councillor Macri.
Councillor Macri, yes.
Chair, I understand why you've put this up, and I know one of the triggers why they actually approached you was in the letter. It said we follows with interest the facilities at Ashfield. Also, we note the Inner West Council recently went to market to seek external providers for exercise physiology services, a range of other allied health services for Leichhardt Aquatic Centre. We believe the onset of COVID has expression of interest. The project was temporarily suspended. So that's triggered their interest. Then we get to West Tigers, where they've put their proposal clearly. I'm not going to read them out. You've read them quite eloquently. And that's where it stops. South Cares are a rugby league football club, and we ran a program and we won awards for it at Mayoral Council. They had this thing called the Breakfast Club, where footballers would come and make sure Indigenous kids actually had their breakfast, because a lot of times they don't have any breakfast and it's the worst thing for them. And they ran that out of the PCYC, out of our facility. It won awards. That's a rugby league football club, South Cares. This, I believe, is similar to that. It's worthy of a discussion. If we can get a benefit to the community, particularly the Indigenous community, which we've cancelled Australia Day for, I think we should be trying to help them here. So having a discussion is not an issue. I think we should move ahead with this. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion, councillors?
Councillor Macri, you can put the violin away.
Chair, if I can speak, please.
Yes, Councillor Hesse.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Macri said, there is indeed, or there was indeed an expression of interest process. I believe that this is the process. If there's something that Belgravia and any of its partners wish to put to council and formally, they should do so. I'm concerned that commercial interests should do that. I won't repeat what others have said. I just don't think that this is, I don't think there's anything to see here, basically, and I think we should, I think you should politely tell them to go back and say, well, if they've got something of substance to talk to us about, good. But I can't support what's here tonight. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion, councillors? There's no further discussion. I'll make a brief right of reply. Anyone who's bothered to read or even peruse the letter will be aware that what's been tabled is an offer from West Tigers to undertake, in partnership with council, a range of programming for children within our centres. It's possible that that won't work because our centres are so excellent and well populated already, including the awesome new Ashfield Aquatic Centre, and that would be identified through a meeting. So I really think it's quite extraordinary if we've gotten to the stage where a subset of councillors on this council will refuse to even talk to an organisation if they don't happen to fit into particular ideological worldview. So the idea that West Tigers are some corporate behemoth rather than a local community institution is just wrong, completely wrong. It reminds me of the time that a number of councillors voted against the upgrade to Henson Park because the Newtown Jets were going to be beneficiaries of that and the Women's AFL were going to be beneficiaries of that. It's a very warped view of the world to think that collaboration between the local government and big local community institutions to provide more services for children and to just discuss it, sit down and have a conversation about it. That the idea that amounts to privatisation is patently absurd. So if you don't support the meeting, that's fine, but let's just get on with the rest of the business. This is one of the least important items on the agenda tonight. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Keep them raised. In support, I have councillors McKenna, Drury, Macri. Councillor Iskander, are you there? Councillor Iskander is in support. Councillor Rosidi and myself. All those against, please raise your hands and keep them raised. Against, we have councillors Passis, Stamoulis, Hesse, De Cruz, Lockie, Steer and Kiat, which leaves us with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 against. That has been defeated. Now, councillors, let's get to more voting on future items without there needing to be quite so many adjournments and interruptions because we've got really important business that we need to deal with. Sorry, Councillor Passis, I'll call the meeting to order.
Is it Councillor York at the meeting?
No, she's not in attendance. I've just been notified by Catherine about that recently. So I'll come back to that and we can move a motion to adopt her apology. So it brings us to item 18, I believe, WestConnex Independent Property Impact Assessment Panel. I won't speak to the motion, but I'm happy to address any questions that councillors might have in a right of reply. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion? No? I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. In support, I have councillors Passis, Stamoulis, Hesse, De Cruz, McKenna, Drury, Iskander, Lockie, Macri, Steer, Kiat, Rosidi and myself. That is unanimous.
Councillor Iskander wasn't there before when you spoke to him. Is he there now?
He was there before.
Oh, I didn't hear from him. Okay.
Yeah. That has been carried unanimously. Next item. So there's one final mayoral minute, I believe. Catherine, is that right? The last one in regards to the Stronger Communities Grant Fund?
That's correct.
Thank you. Councillors, you'll be aware from briefings that we've received, written briefs that we've received previously from council officers, that the Inner West has been liaising closely with Canterbury Bankstown to brief Brett Walker, SC, in regards to the Stronger Communities slush fund that everyone is so prominently aware of at the moment because all of the truth is starting to come out about it. Mr. Walker has been liaising with the General Counsel from the Inner West and the General Counsel from Canterbury Bankstown. Last Friday, I participated in a conference with Mr. Walker and with Callas for the Mayor of Canterbury Bankstown and the General Manager at Canterbury Bankstown. And the information that I'm able to convey in this forum is contained within the background to the resolution which I've proposed. In essence, there are serious questions about the legality of the administration of this fund. It's very unlikely that a judge would award council the funds that we should have been allocated if there'd been a fair distribution. However, it may be that a judge could find that the fund had been administered improperly, illegally, unlawfully. And if that were the case, I think it's very likely that the New South Wales government would be forced to come back to the councils who were improperly excluded from applying for these funds and to propose an alternate means for them to be able to receive community infrastructure grants. And that's really the objective that I'm trying to advocate for. I don't leave the politics out of it. Don't want to attack the Premier personally by any means, but we do want the money that we need and that we should have received if this had been conducted in a fair income way. And so we've got to continue our advocacy on that. And the fact that Mr. Walker, such a highly respected public figure and jurist, the fact that he sees that there is an opportunity here indicates that this is something that we should pursue. So what I'm proposing is that we, along with Canterbury Bankstown Council, write to all of the other councils that were not informed of the existence of the fund, despite the fact that they were eligible, and that we ask them to collaborate with us on any future challenge that we might undertake, and that we receive a report back to council with a detailed legal advice from Mr. Walker. That we can all. Sorry, Councillor Passos, if I can just finish speaking to the motion, and that we receive that information, obviously in confidential session, so that we can consider our position. So I will move that way. Councillors, any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Passos.
Well, I'm not raising this because I'm concerned that we're going after the Liberal Party. If there's any way we can get money for our constituents, of course I'd be a party to that. However, I can't vote for this. I need to see some sort of advice from Mr. Walker now before we commence this exercise. You, Mr. Mayor, with the Mayor of Canterbury, came out and said this. Are you saying you don't want to make it political? This is 100% political. However, I need to see advice from Mr. Walker before I vote for this. Of course, I want money for our residents. Our council desperately needs funds. While I've got you on the same issue, did we put in for a grant for the Asheville swimming pool? And was it knocked back, or didn't we put one in? Mr. Mayor, could I have an answer to that question?
Sorry, Councillor, I was on mute. I'll come to your question at the end of your speech. Have you finished?
Yeah. Yes. I need to see legal advice from Mr. Walker. And did we put in for a grant for Asheville swimming pool?
Yeah, no, I've got that. So I'll put that question to the office, but you concluded your remarks. Thank you very much for that.
Chair, if I may, Councillor Hensey.
No, sorry, if I can just put the question to the council officers. The question from Councillor Passos is whether council made any grant applications for the construction of Ashfield Aquatic Centre.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd have to take that one on notice. Obviously, that project has been in the pipeline for quite some number of years, and so I'd have to go back and check our records on that one.
Thank you for that. Councillor Drury.
Mayor, how could we put in a grant application for the Stronger Communities grants
Mr.
when
Mayor,
we didn't know about it? When we
Mayor,
weren't Philip Ruddock or his mates,
Mr.
who
Mayor,
all got the
excuse me.
insides
I'll call the
running
meeting to order.
on this.
Sorry, Councillor.
Mr. Mayor,
Sorry,
that's
Councillor
not.
Drury, just a moment. Councillor Passos, are you making a point of order?
Yeah, I'm making a point of order because that is not the question that I asked.
No, sorry, Councillor Passos. Councillor, I'm going to rule that Councillor Drury was making a rhetorical point, as you frequently do, and I'll allow him to continue his speech. Councillor Drury.
When I make those points, you want to stop the meeting.
Passos, I'll adjourn the meeting if you can't desist from interjecting. We're not going to get very far through the agenda tonight if it doesn't stop. Councillor Drury has the floor.
Yes, Mayor, and I'll reiterate the point. we couldn't have made an application for this money because we didn't know about it. That's the whole point. The whole point
was discussed
that
much.
the whole point is we weren't Philip.
Please don't try. Please don't try
Call
to
the meeting
deflect.
to order. Sorry, Councillor Drury, I'm going to come back to you after an adjournment. Councillor Passis has interjected again, and I'll ask for advice from councillors when we get back in about how we're going to deal with this meeting, because it doesn't look like we're going to be able to undertake it. So I'll adjourn the meeting.
I believe you should give her a warning.
Yeah, well, I'll adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes, and then I'll come back to we'll come back to the matter. The meeting is adjourned.
Hey Siri, call Darcy.
Calling Darcy mobile.
Vic, you want to turn your microphone off, mate? We can hear you.
Good point, Cole.
All right, we'll resume the meeting. Now, councillors, this meeting's becoming quite unmanageable. So whilst I've been very reticent to issue warnings previously in council meetings, in an attempt to get through the business papers tonight, I am going to issue warnings to councillors who continue to interject. So I'll start by issuing a warning to Councillor Passis for her repeated interjections. I'll ask her again to desist. Councillor Drury has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor Drury has the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I fully support this minute, and I note that what it says is that you're asking the General Manager to report back to Council on the written legal advice once received from Walker. That is the process that you've outlined. You've also suggested that there may be other councils that might have had projects like the pool that they might have liked to have looked for some money out of this, this fund to join with us in this process. I congratulate you on the work that you've done in relation to this issue. And I look forward to this motion, this minute being supported.
Chair, if I might, Councillor Hesse.
Yes, Councillor Hesse.
Thank you. Look, I support this motion too. I do have a question though, if I can, and maybe it's, I apologise if it's going beyond the remit of the discussion you had, but was it, given you're saying that the advice of Mr. Walker was that it's unlikely money could come out of it, was there not discussion about referring the matter to the Independent Commission Against Corruption?
I'd prefer not to go very much into the advice for the simple reason that how could I possibly pretend to convey a sophisticated legal position in place of Mr. Walker? So he's preparing a written advice, and that should be available in the very near future. And I'm proposing that it would be provided to councillors so that we could all understand it.
Thanks, Councillor Byrne. I do appreciate that possibly, reflecting on it, probably wasn't the greatest question for a whole range of reasons. Look, I'd like to say, obviously there's an Upper House New South Legislative Council inquiry chaired by Greens MP David Shoebridge, and I'd like to recognise Mr. Shoebridge's work in uncovering these rorts. We are indeed in difficult times. I know councillors will be aware that Central Coast Council is on the edge of suspension or worse because of their financial position. Of course, they're an amalgamation of Wyong and Gosford. We're an amalgamation of 3 councils. We're only too well aware, Canterbury and Bankstown councils put together. So we're in a situation where money has been clearly directed, according to the media, without even a sign-off, to seek to local government areas where there were Liberals in charge, not Greens or Labor. And that's not okay when it comes to allocation of public funds. So I think we should look at this advice and take it where it goes, I guess. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Stamoulis.
Mr. Mayor, we only have to mention the Armidale Council, Central Coast Council, Inner West Council, and I think that generally they've been referred to as troubled councils, all emerged. And prior to 2016, our 5 inner city councils of Canterbury, Bankstown, Ashfield, Leichhardt and Marrickville, those 5 councils were unmerged, and yet the 5 Labor mayors took them into a merger. Eyes wide open when people like me and other councillors and the public were screaming, saying this will be a financial disaster. This will be an absolute financial disaster. Those 5 Labor mayors walked into a merger, and look where we're at now. It's going to cost us a fortune. In fact, we asked council at that time to get the best legal advice, to pay for legal advice to ensure we weren't merged. We're now getting legal advice to try and get some money we're paying for legal advice. We were refused that legal advice back in 2016. We're now paying to get money to get the funds we need. I'll be supporting the motion because, as I said in 2016 and ever since, we need a bucket load of money to make this merger work, to continue on with the merger. My estimates are we're spending on average between $12 and $15 million a year at least on this, and we're 4.5 years in with another 4 years to go. Mr. Mayor, we need the $24 million you're saying. We need $40 to $50 million, in fact, to continue on this very expensive merger of 3 councils, one of the very few mergers that took on a 3-way merger, which has added a huge expense for our public and for our community. I'll tell you what, here's our opportunity to seek a demerger. That's what we should really be going for. But in any way, I will support your motion. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Further discussion, councillors?
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question?
Oh, yes, Councillor Rossetti.
This is just for a report to come back to council, is that right?
That's right, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lockie.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. A couple of questions. Just first one was, I know we've received some initial verbal advice on this matter without wanting to go into the detail of it, given it was confidential. Are you expecting that we will get new information through based on your most recent discussions? I guess that's probably where I need to stop there.
Yeah, I think the report, the written advice will be very sophisticated and informative, and will have lots of information in it that none of us are aware of as yet. So hence why I'm very reluctant to try to paraphrase, a verbal advice that I was party to. I don't think we'll have to wait very long for all councillors to be able to receive the advice.
Great, that's good. And just a question on the $24 million figure that you've quoted in the motion. Where does that come from?
Well, if you'd averaged out, if the funds from the $252 million had been distributed by their proper purpose, which was for amalgamated councils, and that had been distributed fairly on a per capita basis, we averaged out at $24 million. So we might have received more, but that's the figure that I've extrapolated.
Okay, that's useful to know. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, any further discussion, councillors?
Yeah, I've just got a question about the cost of the amalgamation. Have we got an estimate of that?
I'll put that question to the council officers.
Sorry, councillors. No, through the chair, we've never actually undertaken a detailed and comprehensive cost of the amalgamation or an analysis thereof.
Thank you for that. Councillor De Cruz.
At the risk of putting an extra load on our staff, I think that would be a useful exercise to undertake.
Point of order, Mayor, that's straying well away from the point of the mayoral minute. It could be a separate motion if the council wishes to put a notice up.
Mr. Mayor, that wasn't a point of order, and how come Mr. Drury is not accused of interjection?
Sorry, Councillor Passis. I'll ask everyone to stop interjecting. Councillor Drew is making a perfectly legitimate point of order, which is that the amendment is not relevant to the motion, so it is out of order. So I thank him for his point of order. But he's also right that it's open to Councillor De Cruz to separately table that proposal as a motion for the next council meeting. So I'd encourage her to do so if that's what she'd like.
Fine, thank you. Yep.
Is there any further discussion, councillors?
A very brief question, Councillor Byrne. Can you tell me, has council retained Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. There's no further discussion.
Mayor, can I ask a question? Did we vote to retain Mr. Walker?
I don't think so, councillor, but we received advice quite some time ago in writing from the General Counsel about the fact that the officers.
But we didn't vote to retain him.
No, that's right. So we're voting tonight to get a report from him, or not to, if you'd prefer not. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. In support, I have councillors Stamoulis, Hesse, Drury, Lockie, Steer, Macri, Kiat, McKenna, Rosidi, Iskander, and Councillor De Cruz, I presume. So that's, and then against would be Councillor Passis. That has been carried. So I think that brings us to Tempe Reserve councillors. I'll open it up to discussion.
Mayor, may I move?
Mr. Mayor, don't we have the auditors waiting?
Oh, sorry about that, councillor. I'll just go to the officers and just ask. I wasn't aware that we were, I knew that we were adopting the financial statements, but I didn't realise they were actually with us. So I can see, I can see the auditors now. So sorry to have kept you so long.
That's okay.
Thank you very much for your patience. Did you want to make an opening statement?
Yes. So through the chair, would you like me? I was planning to do just a brief presentation on the audit process and the report on the conduct. If we're up to that.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So, well, good evening again, Mayor and councillors. As you know, I'm Caroline Karakatsanis. So the Director of Financial Audit from the Audit Office of New South Wales. And I also have Rochelle Antolin. So she's the Audit Manager on Inner West, and she's here with me online as well. So thank you. Thank you for the invitation to present tonight. It's a very unusual year. I'm presenting on Zoom, which is very different to waiting in that the dining room there before I usually present to council. But we are definitely in unprecedented times with COVID. And as you know, the delivery of essential services has actually been maintained during 2020 through the hard work of council and your council staff. I would also like to note that your council has actually worked to support the audit process, and we're actually completing the audit process against the normal timeframe rather than taking up the 1 month extension that OLG has provided to councils. So tonight I'll just be taking you through the results of our audit and a high level snapshot of your council's financial performance compared to the OLG industry benchmarks. So before taking you through this, I would just like to bring your attention to some of the work that the Auditor General does in terms of her reports to Parliament. So we don't only do financial audits and do financial audit reports to Parliament, we also do performance audits. Our 2020 financial audit in local government is expected to be tabled at the end of February next year. So once we've completed the audit of all the councils for this the 2020 financial year, the results of all of that will go into a report, a sector report to Parliament. It'll include key findings that come out from these council audits, any key themes and observations that will all be included. And obviously this year we did focus on some areas such as the impacts of COVID, natural disasters, accounting for landfills, and as always look at information technology, general controls. So we focus on governance over IT, access controls, program changes and disaster recovery across the councils. So if we look at performance audit, you may be interested that we have tabled 2 performance audit reports this year in local government. So we have tabled one in August on governance and internal controls over local infrastructure contributions. So the way we do performance audits is we select some councils. So Inner West was not selected in any of the performance audits, but for this particular one, it was Blacktown, Central Coast, City of Sydney and Liverpool Council. So our report did have some findings where there were gaps in governance and controls over the infrastructure contributions across all the councils, and we made recommendations for councils relating to improving controls over contributions and increasing transparency. The other performance audit that has been tabled is credit card management. Again, Inner West wasn't selected as one of the auditees, but we Dubbo, Junee, Lane Cove, Nabucca Valley and Penrith and Shellharbour, they were all included. We tabled that report in September. And again, that performance report did note that all those 6 councils had some gaps in credit card policies. While they all had policies and procedures, their application was varied across the councils. So our audit did recommend that the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment should publish guidelines on credit card management for the local government sector. There's another performance audit in progress, which is the management of procurement. So that's yet to be tabled. And when that comes out, you can see all of these reports on our website. The other document that we've released in July this year is our annual work plan. So just again, bringing this to your attention, this work plan, it actually explains how the Auditor General decides what to focus on and what she needs to cover for the 2021 year. And we look at it on a sector basis across all the sectors that we audit. And it looks at both financial audit and performance audits for the next 2021 year and then the 2 years after that. So obviously with all the bushfires, floods and COVID and the scale of government spending on our audits, both the financial and performance audits will focus on emergency responses to date. And in the later years, we will look at recovery and the impact of government actions. So that you know, the 3 scheduled performance audits that we're planning to do between now and 30 June 2021 is business continuity and disaster recovery planning, council annual charges, and coordination of agencies in precinct planning. So that last one will actually look at state government and local government combined, and just look at how effectively the department can coordinate other responsibilities from other government entities to deliver on objectives. So that's just giving you a feel of what performance audits we're planning to do going forward. But I suppose the main reason I'm here is looking at the financial audit of Inner West Council. So we have completed our audit of the general and the special purpose financial statements and all the relevant special schedules. So I am pleased to report to you today that we will issue a clean audit opinion of your council's financial statements for 2019-20. So this really means that your council's financial statements contain no material misstatements and do present fairly. So as part of the audit process, the council's Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, they've reviewed the financial statements and the results of the audit, and they've recommended this to council. So I noted that in the minutes included in today's council papers. The Office of Local Government sets out what needs to be covered in the report on the conduct, and that's primarily the reason why I'm presenting these here tonight. So you can see in the financial statements, note 28, it shows you all the 6 key performance ratios which are audited within the general purpose financial statements. So if you look at these ratios, you can see that your council has met the industry benchmarks for 5 out of the 6 performance ratios in the 2020 financial statements. So the ratio that the council did not meet was for the rates and annual charges outstanding percentage. So for Inner West, the ratio was 5.08%, which is just above the benchmark, which is set at less than 5%. So we can say that this really was due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which did affect the capacity of some ratepayers to meet their instalment payments. And also there was a deliberate debt recovery strategy by your council taken not to take debt recovery against your eligible pensioners. So in terms of the other major impact this year was the adoption of new revenue and leasing accounting standards. So you'll see in the financial statements, this results in some new line items. In the statement of financial position, you'll see terms like contract assets and liabilities, which have come on from the revenue standards. There is now right of use assets and lease liabilities, and that's due to the new leasing standard. So effectively, this new leasing standard is actually just bringing on operating leases onto the balance sheet. So if we look at your council's, the operating result of your council, you can see that the operating result from continuing operations is 82 million. So this includes depreciation and amortization expense of 29.3 million. And it was 65 million higher than your 2019 result. So the increase resulted mainly from the gain, the net gain on disposal of your investment property, so the Tempe land of 45 million. And there's also the increase in rates, annual charges and grants revenue by a total of 20.7 million. So those did contribute to your operating result being so much higher than the deficit in the previous year. Grants and contributions revenue did increase by 17.4 million. And again, that was mainly due to developer and non-cash contributions received during the year. And you also had a 3.8 million increase in childcare grants revenue to support childcare services delivered during the COVID-19 environment. So if you then look at your net operating result, so this is before capital grants and contributions, this was 46.5 million, again higher 53 million higher than the 6.6 million deficit in 2018-19. So if we now look at the performance ratios, you can see that the council has achieved the operating performance ratio of 0.38%. So this did decrease from 0.46% last year, and it's just exceeding the industry benchmark of break even. So really meaning that council can contain their expenditure within operating revenue. Another ratio set by OLG is the own source operating revenue ratio. So this was 81.08% in 2020, and the council continues to meet this benchmark, which is greater than 60%. So this really means that council is not heavily reliant on external funding, such as grants and contributions, and it is an indicator of sustainability. So that's more on the income statement. And then turning to your balance sheet, you can see that council has cash and investment balances of 321.1 million, which again was higher than 228.8 million last year. And if you look at this, 12.9% or 41 million is unrestricted cash. So it means that the rest is restricted for specific purposes. So these are both internal and external restrictions. And you'll note this year that the internal restricted cash actually increased to 154 million from 53 million last year. And again, this increase was for the funds set aside for the investment property acquisitions and infrastructure renewals. So we have a high level of internal restrictions on that cash. And again, if you look at the ratios relating to cash levels, your council has an unrestricted current ratio of 5.68. So this was higher than last year's ratio of 3.04 and higher than the benchmark of 1.5. So this means that council can service short-term obligations as they fall due. Council also exceeded the cash expense cover ratio benchmark of greater than 3 months. So really meaning that the council can continue to pay for its immediate expenses for 11.53 months without additional cash flows. The council's debt service cover ratio is 6.07, and that's again above the benchmark of 2 times, indicating that the council is able to service existing loans. So they are the key ratios set by the OLG, of which you can see council has met apart from the outstanding rates. The other comment that we look at is renewals on your infrastructure, property, plant and equipment. So we can see that council's completed asset renewals projects for the year were 7.5 million. That did drop from 38.9 million in the previous year, driven by a lower number of completed capital projects during the year. However, during the 2019-20 year, 42.3 million was capitalised as new assets, and this was up from 4.9 million last year. So this included the completion of the Mayoral Library and the Hub, and you also got receipt of non-cash contributions such as affordable housing units. So overall, as I mentioned already, you have met 5 out of the 6 industry benchmarks that are audited and that we've reported on. And just overall, I would like to thank the Mayor, acting CEO, the CFO, and all the management for working with us and the team during very, very interesting times that we've managed to get to this point, which is great. Yes, so thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
May I ask?
Sorry, just a moment. Thank you very much for that very thorough presentation. Just before we get on to questions from councillors, I'll just formally move that we suspend standing orders to deal with the financial statements. Councillor Kiat will second that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Councillor Passos, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. On the minutes, in the minutes on page 106, that the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee 1 endorsed the general purpose financial statement for the year ended 30 June 2020 for submission to Council for adoption, subject to processing the amendments agreed with the Chief Financial Officer. What were those amendments? And wouldn't they come to Council first?
I'll put that question to the auditor.
Yes, so I may, I think the CFO is online as well, but my understanding would be that those amendments would be amendments through the audit process. So any changes misstatements or corrections that have been made through the audit process would have been changed. And we have reported that to management through our closing report and to the Audit and Risk Committee.
Thank you, but do we see those amendments?
Through the CFO, yes, you can.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thanks for clearing that up.
No,
Any
yeah, but
further?
how can we see them? Sorry, and when do we?
Oh,
when
sorry,
can-
I'll put that question to the Chief Financial Officer.
Through the chair, once we've got everything dealt with, we can distribute all the documentation.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Further questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, this is Councillor Steer.
Sorry, I've got Councillor Stamalis and then Councillor Steer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just a question through the chair. I'm just trying to reconcile the investment balances of $315 million. I think that's what you said, with the next report that's coming up, which is our investment report, which says that the balances are $223 million. Can you just reconcile those for me? Thank you.
Put that question to the auditor.
Yeah, I probably would have to defer that to the CFO, but I think what you may be referring to, so the numbers that I was referring to was all your cash and investments with 321.1 million as per the audited financial statements. However, your cash and cash equivalents could be lower. So if you're excluding investments, if that's perhaps where the difference may be.
Does that address your question, Councillor?
Or maybe the financial officer might like to add to that, Mr. Mayor.
I'll put that question to the Chief Financial Officer.
Through the chair, Carolina, the auditor is correct. It's the 300 is the total amount.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Stamos, did you have further questions?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Steer?
Thank you, Mayor. Through the chair, I note that we still have a deficit, although it's reduced and now it's 14.5 million. I'd just like to ask whether this is considered to be a manageable deficit in terms of able to be serviced, and whether the council is able to pay its bills, including staff, when these things fall due.
I'll put that question to the auditor.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of, I think you're referring to the underlying deficit included in management's report. So they're really taking out that one-off gain from the disposal of Tempe. So in terms of the comments that I could make is looking at the ratios. You still do have an operating performance ratio of greater than 0%, and that actually excludes that gain from disposal. So it's just above 0%, meaning you can contain revenue, your expenditure within revenue. And then just looking at your current asset ratio, you're still more than the 1.5 benchmark. So I'm just comparing your unrestricted current ratio to the OLG's benchmark of more than 1.5. And you do have that's indicating that you can pay for your immediate liabilities as they fall due. But I suppose going forward and sustainability, that would be really, based on management's long-term financial plans and strategies in place there. That would probably be better addressed by management. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That answers my question.
Thank you for that. Councillor De Cruz?
Yeah, look, I think the ARIC, or was it the report on the from ARIC chair on at the end of the thing makes an emphasis about the one-off event affecting the accounts, and I think it's also been that has been a significant source of income, and we don't really want to deplete our investment. So could you comment on that point 4 of the ARIC comment of the ARIC minutes, which is about communication?
I'll put that question to the auditor.
Yes, I'm just trying to, in terms of the, sorry, do you just want to repeat that in terms of the ARIC minute?
Well, the ARIC minute says that the council needs to note that the underlying financial performance when one-off events are taken into account is not as positive as is apparent in the single year results.
Yeah, I think that's just reflecting when you look at the results and you don't take off that one-off event, the council's results are very positive. So you'll see the net operating result before capital grants and contributions of 46.5 million. So that's up considerably from a 6.6 million deficit in the prior year. And again, a lot of that is from the sale. But then it's really up to management's planning going forward in terms of how to maintain that net operating result being positive and with strategies that they have in place. So that's probably all I can comment on. Otherwise, it's the management of it's how management will manage the finances going forward. But there aren't any other indicators that would show, based on the 2020 results, that there's any sustainability issues based on current, but comparing it to the LG benchmarks.
Thank you for that. Further questions? There's no further questions. Will someone move the adoption of the financial statements? Councillor Lockie, is there a seconder?
Yes, Councillor was just putting on an exhibition.
Councillor De Cruz will second it. All those in favour, please raise your hands. I presume that's unanimous. Does anyone wish to be recorded voting against it? That's been carried unanimously. Thank you very much to the auditor for your patience and to the officers involved in the preparation of the statements. Next item. So we'll resume standing orders, which I think brings us back to Tempe Reserve.
Mayor, may I move the officer's recommendation with an amendment, please?
Yes. Do you wish to speak to it, councillor?
Certainly. Can we have the amendment up, please?
Councillor, I don't have the amendment.
Okay, I'll email it.
Do you want to do that first, Councillor Drury, or did you wish to speak to it now?
Look, I'll speak to it now, and I'll indicate that the amendment that I seek to move will be to note that nothing in the adoption of this plan of management will preclude the operation of the Motorboat Association.
I second that. And
call for a report to come back to council. So I would like to thank the officers for this plan of management. This is a very large and important part of our community. It is a part of the community next to the Cooks River, and so it does need some fairly special attention. It's also a pretty important active and passive recreation area for our community. I think a good process has been gone through. I think that we have had a good engagement, and anyone who's taken the opportunity to have a look at the engagement will see that. And so I commend the adoption of the plan of management as outlined with the amendment that I shall resend.
Thank you. Councillor Passos, did you wish to second that?
Yes, I did second it. Thank you.
Do you wish to speak to it?
No, I'm too scared. I might get another warning.
Chair, if I might speak on the matter, Councillor Hesse.
Yes, Councillor Hesse.
It's terrific to see people from Ashfield Wood taking such an interest in Tempe. But I do thank Councillor Drury for his amendment. I think that's a good one, and I do think it's. I think I was impressed by our speaker and impressed by what he sent through to me earlier today. Clearly, and it is mainly men, I think, but the people there engaging in productive activities, a heritage activity, but you know, keeping the skills alive, I think is a really wonderful thing, and it does engage with some of our older members of our community. So I think really important to recognise that and to support that, and I ask all councillors to support that amendment. I'd like to move one amendment too, which I'd sent through to Catherine earlier, and I hope she might put that up there. I'll speak to it. That is that on page 39 of the plan of management, there's a subheading, private enterprise, and insert additional sentence at the beginning, any change in the management of temporary reserve to be consulted with the community. Now, at the moment, it goes on to talk about doing your say and so doing various things. But I want to make it very, very clear that that the community contacts I've had and have written to me, particularly Tempe P&C, are making it very, very clear that they do want any changes down there consulted with them before they happen. I'm not going to, I don't seek to create political advantage or disharmony by mentioning the Newington thing, but I think what I got very strongly from that, regardless of where you fell on the issue, was that people in the community at Tempe did not feel consulted and indeed felt very angry about that. So I think we're going to make it very, very clear, and I hope that Councillor Drury and Councillor Passis might agree to insert that as well. It just makes it very, very clear about the process, whether if we are going to change things down there. I guess while I do thank the officers for the report, and there's clearly been a lot of good work done, I don't feel that it's a very easy report to access. I think the issue that Mr. McDonald raised from the Motorboat Club was very difficult to find and was only briefly dealt with. Indeed, I have to say that trying to read the report online was very difficult too. The words were so small that in fact they ran together, so it made it very difficult to analyse the report. And I think we've mentioned this before, but I do think that the reports clearly follow a formula, but they don't go to the meat of the matter early. And I do think we need to look around at these things. I understand action is being taken on that. It takes a while to get the pipeline going, but it's not an easy or community-friendly document to read, let alone a councillor-friendly document to read. So I do have my issues with it. That notwithstanding, I do think that as it stands, it's okay. I do think in a funny kind of way that the report or that the plan of management hints at what might be and what could be. And these are really big issues. I'll probably bring them up later on in a notice of motion later on this year, early next year, about how we look at the opportunities that these places provide to us. I think we're a little bit between two stools, but in a way, I guess we are still coming to grips with the Amalgamated Council and a whole stack of stuff that we've engaged with, which has been very clear.
Councillor, I think your time has expired.
Thanks, Kat. I'll end there. It's okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just ask Councillor Drury to consider whether he wishes to incorporate the amendment from Councillor Hesse into the primary motion. Further discussion, councillors? There's no further discussion. I'll go to Councillor Drury for his right of reply.
Mark, you need to turn your microphone on. Can't hear you.
Councillor Drury, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, some technique. I don't believe there's any need. I urge all councillors to support this.
Okay, thank you for that. And are you willing to incorporate Councillor Hesse's amendment?
I am.
Okay, that's incorporated into the motion. I'll put that. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against, I presume that's unanimous. Is there anyone who wishes to vote against it? That's been carried unanimously. Next item. That brings us to proposed Inner West Fest 2021 program in response to ongoing COVID-19 impacts. Can I just commence the discussion about this by thanking the council officers for the preparation of what looks like a very well thought through program to me. So that's excellent work, and I want to thank them on behalf of the councillors. Does anyone wish to discuss the matter?
I'm happy to move it unless you're planning to, Councillor Byrne.
Yeah, I'll move it. You can second it, councillor. Do you wish to speak to it?
No, just to reiterate your comments. I know they've been working for a long time on how to put forward a festival program and support our local arts community in a way that's also COVID safe. So thank you for that.
If I could just raise a few things on this.
Yes, councillor.
Yes, I just want council to know how upset a lot of the residents, not just Ashfield, that the Carnival of Cultures has been abandoned, and all we've got in Ashfield is the Moon Festival and the Chinese New Year. People are very upset about this.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further discussion, councillors?
Yep, I've got a comment. Just with regard to the wards, I think it's important to realise that some of the suburbs are actually split across wards. It's often forgotten that North Ashfield is actually in the Leichhardt Galgadia ward, and North Annandale is in with the Balmain ward. And so I think that's quite important in reflecting the activities that occur. So Croydon's not really off on a remote island. It's actually continuous with the North Ashfield part, which is actually in the Leichhardt ward. So I think with the identification of the suburbs that are in each of those wards, I think that needs to be amended. I've actually sent that wording through to Catherine.
Okay, thank you for that. Further discussion, councillors? There's no further discussion. Councillor Lockie, are you satisfied with incorporating the De Cruz amendment? Councillor Lockie?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, that's incorporated into the primary motion. I'll put that. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Keep them raised. All those against? Does anyone wish to be recorded voting against it?
Yes, I am, Councillor Passos.
Councillor Passos is against. That has been carried.
Mayor, may I move the officer's recommendation in relation to item 3, please?
Point of order, Mr Mayor. Point of order.
Yes.
Why is Councillor Drury moving Marrickville motions, Balmain motions and every other motion to do with the municipality?
Well, I'm afraid that's not related to the code of meeting practice, councillor. So Councillor Drury...
For goodness sakes.
Sorry about that. Councillor Drury, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Certainly do. And councillors, I have a deep and abiding interest in the whole of the municipality. I travel and enjoy many parts of the municipality on a regular basis, and I've been known to go down to Birchgrove Oval on more than one occasion. And I thank the officers for the report that they have provided in relation to the fence. The proposition of a steel powder-coated picket fence is what is being recommended here. It is recommended by our officers who have researched the matter and come back with a very well-reasoned proposition. I believe that this fence, which will be not dissimilar from other steel-coated, powder-coated steel fences in other premier ovals in our community, is an appropriate thing to do. There are at least 3 other premier ovals that have this approach, And I've got to say, after periods of time, they look a heck of a lot better than the current fence down at Birch Grove Oval. Councillors, I'd urge all of you to support the resolution to install the steel powder-coated picket fence on Birch Grove Oval.
Councillor Stamoulis. Councillor Stamoulis, did you wish to speak to the item?
Yes, I am speaking to the item, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear
Thank
me?
you. Yeah, I can now.
Mr. Mayor, I have an alternative motion that's been sent through already that council proceed with a wooden picket fence for Birch Grove Oval that's consistent with the historic aspect of that oval. Today, all councillors received a note from the National Trust expressing the importance of retaining a wooden picket fence at Birch Grove Oval. Such an important thing that the National Trust has decided to send a note through. Additionally, today councillors received photos of a metal picket fence, which is severely damaged, broken, which would not occur with a wooden picket fence. So damage does occur, it rusts and it degrades over time, probably to an extent far worse than would occur with wood. Now, if council is to maintain its strict controls on heritage with our residents, we must do so for ourselves. We can't bend the rules. If it's so important to have heritage standards in the private space for our residents, then it's important to maintain it in the public space as well. And we must demonstrate that as the Inner West Council. We cannot continue to do things on the cheap. We don't let our residents respond to heritage on the cheap, and we mustn't do it ourselves. We must not relax our rules. And it's very clear from the photos that we've seen that metal fences are less durable when they're hit by cricket balls. Certainly, they're less durable than what a wooden picket fence would be. I suggest to all councillors that this report has not responded to our resolution of the previous meeting, where we specifically asked for a report to come back on whether a new wooden fence or a repaired wooden fence would achieve the best result for Birch Grove Oval. That there has been no response to that. Our debate virtually excluded a metal picket fence, and yet we have a report in front of us dealing only with a metal picket fence. We have specifically asked for information about whether repairs or a new wooden picket fence would be best for council, and that has not been responded to in this report. I find that problematic, and that should have been done for councillors. This is a great opportunity for us to express our principles as a council in terms of heritage on the public space, and to keep Birch Grove Oval, which is of state heritage significance, as one of our priority heritage spaces. Thank you.
May I speak, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Passis.
Well, first of all, I am not such a stickler for heritage. But when I sit on a council that tells our residents that they must be, and residents pay extra, and 99% of the residents willingly do so, why is our council going against this? I can say what's just been moved now is purely political. It's from a councillor that forced a heritage listing on a property that wasn't listed after people bought the property.
Point of order, Mayor.
No, it's no.
Point of order. The councillor is raising an irrelevant and erroneous subject into this debate.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Passos, I'll just ask you to address the Birchgrove Oval fence.
Okay, well, that was an example of do as I say, not as we do. A picket fence is safer than a metal fence. And the report states about the maintenance. We have ongoing maintenance every day. That's what a council is here for, to maintain the properties, to maintain these type of things. So I cannot understand, and as Councillor Stamoulis pointed out, I was reminded and went back and looked. The resolution was the cost of repairing and replacing the timber fence. This resolution is completely opposite than what council resolved. This is cause of great concern. Great concern. Councillors voted accordingly for the cost of repairs, maintenance, or a new timber fence. And this comes back completely different to what council resolved. There must be an explanation for this. And I will be following up and wanting an explanation on this. This is not just one-off. I'll be raising another issue where there was a council resolution and now I'm told it's been changed, the council resolution, without coming back to council. This cannot continue.
Further discussion, councillors?
Can I just ask a question?
Yep, Councillor Lockwood.
Just in relation to, there's financial implications noted in this report of an additional 114,000 which would, I think, would only apply to the foreshadowed motion. Does that need to specify a funding source in order to be in order?
I don't think you can count a depreciation cost into the future as a requirement for a depreciation cost on an asset as something that would need to be funded from this year's budget and therefore need to have that funding source identified. Councillor Lockie.
Okay.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Yes, Chair, if I may. Councillor.
Yes, Councillor Hesse.
Yeah, look, I believe that we should go ahead with the wooden picket fence. It's like all political parties, we have members with a range of experience, and we got some advice yesterday from one of our members whose family business is running fences, putting up fences of various sorts. And she was very, very clear, having worked in the family business at some time, that particularly, I guess she was concerned about metal fences near salt water, which of course Birchgrove is, and how durable that fence may be, but also the question of ongoing maintenance. And I think councillors have already spoken about the importance of regular maintenance. We have, as Councillor Stammer said, received a correspondence from the National Trust. I do think there's clear support for this in the community. I do think, indeed, as Councillor Passos has said, there is significant support in our community for heritage generally. And I think it is less than clear for me that this is that a timber fence is the most expensive option in the long run. Indeed, it may be cheaper. The difference may indeed be marginal. I think we should act in good faith with our inner Western community and restore the wooden picket fence. Thank you.
Further discussion, councillors?
Yep. Can I speak?
And I'm happy to support Councillor Stamoulis's motion. I'm happy to second Councillor Stamoulis's motion. Sorry about that.
So, yeah, look, I think as Councillor Hesse said, that there's some issues with the installation of steel down at the foreshore, that there'd be a requirement that it'd be marine grade or galvanised, which there doesn't seem to be any indication that that was actually specified in the tender. So we might actually be looking at something that's completely inappropriate that won't last down at that particular location. We also do need to know the cost of repairing the fence. So I spoke to the Bower today, who's spearheading a campaign of the right to repair. They also collect materials and with the intention of reusing them. So I think what we have here is an opportunity to produce a sustainable solution, primarily looking at the repair. This fence was actually, I mean, as a bit disappointed, I thought it might have been 50 years old, but it's actually only 30 years old. And I don't think it's quite as damaged as we believe. The photographs at Jubilee Oval are of a 16-year-old fence, which has sustained quite a lot of damage. So I think the claims of having a metal fence that lasts 50 years are extraordinary, because I believe those metal fences only have a 10-year warranty. We've got to look at the painting that needs to be done on them, whether you can repaint them, what kind of maintenance can actually be carried out when they're damaged. We note that I don't know, perhaps Inner West Council is being much better at maintaining their metal fences than the City of Sydney, but the Jubilee Oval metal fence seems to be in quite poor condition. It's lost its caps. There's rusty bits, the paint has peeled, and that's just 16 years. So a claim that a fence will last 20 years without any work, or 50 years in the long run, I think is just unrealistic. And also from a maintenance, you can't repair a part of it. I think really we do need to look at the repair of this fence. And I hope that Councillor Stamoulis, when he mentions proceed, actually means consideration of repair as well as replacement of the wooden picket fence at Birchgrove Oval, and perhaps if he's willing to make that amendment, because I'd actually suggested we get a quote on the repair of the wooden picket fence down at Birchgrove Oval, and assign a certain amount of money to do maintenance. I'm not sure when the last bit of maintenance was actually done on this fence, but we do need to maintain our property. We need to paint the property, otherwise the wood deteriorates. Maybe a few uprights need to be replaced. Maybe there's some hardwood in the Bowers storage that they've retrieved that can be used to replace some of those uprights. So I think it's really, really disappointing that we're looking at metal at only that we're presented only with a metal option, with claims that are hard to swallow and may not be.
Councillor, your time has expired.
Yep. So yep, I'll be supporting this, and since Councillor Hessie's already seconded, that's fine. But and whether Councillor Stamoulis will actually amend it slightly to have to request actually a quote for the repair.
Happy to get those quotes for councillors. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's been incorporated into Councillor Stamoulis Hessie motion. Further discussion, councillors?
Sorry, Councillor Byrne, can I ask another question based on some of those comments?
Yep.
Just this is probably one for the officers, but just in relation to the cost of the steel repairs to the steel fence. I've got some of those photos through as well of some of the damage done to the the fence in the City of Sydney, but I know that there's a heritage park in my ward at Camperdown Oval, which is a similar situation to this, which is cited in the report, that's steel. So I was just wondering if the officers could provide some comment on what repairs have been done there and that's required.
I'll put that question to the officers.
Through the chair, there's been no substantive repairs required to the Camperdown fence, which has been in place for a number of years now.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lockie, did you have a further question?
Yeah, just through you, do we know how many years a number of years is?
I'll put that question to the officers.
I'm afraid no, I don't know that off the top of my head. I could take that on notice.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Further discussion. Does anyone else have anything that they wanted to contribute, or can I go to Councillor Drury for his right of reply?
Yeah, can I say something to Councillor Macri?
Yes, Councillor Macri.
Chair, I raised the issue of heritage last time, and I think people have misconstrued my comments. My comments were in relation to houses and how we actually need to be more pragmatic in how we deal with that. And there should be hardship clauses in that, where a like-for-like material should able to be substituted, as in this situation where a like-for-like material can be substituted. That's why I raised that issue, to show staff that it actually is important to use a little bit of sensitivity when it comes to that. And realistically, we already have at Petersham Oval, we already have the metal fence. We have it at Camperdown Oval, across the river. They've got it on the river at Elwood, in Gough Whitlam Park down there. And it looks great. You know, it stands up to cricket a lot better because the pickets don't get broken off as much. Depends on the type of fence you put, what type of fixture you put on it. If it's just a solid picket without any points, it's probably more durable, and that's what's there down at, I think, Camperdown Oval. So I'm happy to second this motion, because in reality, it's about time the Republic of Leichhardt became part of the Inner West and did what the rest of the Inner West is doing. They are heritage items. They're done. I had that debate when we did Petersham Park, and it was the same sort of noise around it. But at the end of the day, people get used to it, and there's no issues associated with it. So I'm happy to support the motion to go ahead as it is. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll go to Councillor Drury.
Look, I thank you, Mayor. And firstly, I'll note, in relation to the heritage issue, a heritage impact statement was submitted. The proposed work at Birchgrove Park or Oval is considered to be sympathetic approach to replace the existing fence with a suitable style and appearance of fencing that has been used in other heritage listed parks in the LGA. The works are consistent with the Conservation Plan of Management and the Plan of Management for the park. No adverse impacts have been, heritage impacts have been found. The cultural significance of the place is enhanced, and the works are considered to have a positive impact on the park. That is the heritage impact statement. Secondly, we are advised what it will cost to put up a new wooden fence, and that's the same as what it costs to put up the steel fence. However, what has been said is that there are depreciation and maintenance costs which are higher for this sort of fence. This report completely complies with the resolution that we passed. I think any assertion to the contrary is mischievous and disingenuous. The other point that I'd like to make is we employ Tim Brown, the coordinator of Parks, Projects and Delivery, and Kathy Edwards-Davis as the Director of Infrastructure, to give us their best advice. They've given us their best advice, and it is contained in this report and recommendation. Now, sure, we can all ask a mate who's a fencer, or we could ask someone on the National Trust to write us a letter, or we could do all that. But that doesn't diminish from the advice that we've been given. The advice we've been given is clear, it has been consistent, and to make this fence steel coated, that's steel powdered coated steel, puts it in line with all of the other heritage parks in the area. It puts it in line with Pratton Park. It puts it in line with Camperdown. It puts it in line with...
Councillor, your time has expired. Okay, thank you for that. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour of the Drury-Macri motion, please raise your hands. I have in support Councillors Drury, McKenna. Councillor Rosidi, are you in support?
No.
Okay. Councillors Lockie, Macri and Iskander. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And all those against, please raise your hands. Keep them raised. I've got against, I've got Kiat and myself. So that has been defeated. We'll now move on to the foreshadowed motion, the Stamoulis-Hesse motion, to proceed with a wooden picket fence. All those in favour, please raise your hands. In support, I have Councillors Passis, Stamoulis, Hesse, Steer, McKenna, Rosidi, De Cruz, Lockie, Macri, Iskander, Kiat and myself. That has been carried. Next item. Planning proposal pre-exhibition report, extended trading hours and cultural activities. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation and again express my gratitude and thanks for the excellent policy development work that's gone into this policy. It's terrific to see it coming forward at this time, and I'm sure that it'll be very warmly welcomed by the entire cultural community who've been advocating for reform in this direction for a long time. So thank you very much to the council officers. I'm very happy to move the adoption of the recommendation.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Macri. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor?
No, not at this stage.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak to the motion?
Councillor Hesse, if I may.
Yes.
Just a question.
Yep, and then Councillor McKenna.
Thanks, Chair. I've sent through an amendment to Catherine a little while ago that an additional 0.5 be added. And I hope that the movers and seconders might consider it, that the operation of the policy be reviewed after 12 months and a report prepared for council. I'm proposing that because while I understand, and I think we all understand the circumstances we're in at the moment in particular, and the damage that's been done necessarily, I mean, no one wanted to do the damage to the economy, whether they were state or federal governments around managing COVID, but it has been a real problem. There have been real problems, and I think we've spoken earlier tonight. I've spoken earlier tonight about the damage to our performing arts community. But I think we also need to be cognizant of the problems with exempt and compliant development. Yeah. Indeed, the state government set up a commissioner because private certifiers have not been found to be particularly rigorous in doing the right thing. And I think it would be prudent, because we represent everyone in the community, not just the arts community, but we also represent the residents who live in shop-top housing. So I think it's prudent to come back in 12 months' time and receive a report from council staff about its operation. I hope it's been seamless and that everyone's happy, but if it's not, I think we need to look at that again. So I hope that councils will consider this as a prudent amendment. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Seems perfectly sensible to me. Any further discussion, councillors?
Thank you.
Yes.
Councillor Steer?
Councillor De Cruz?
Oh, Councillor De Cruz, yep.
Councillor De Cruz?
Yes, Councillor De Cruz.
Yeah, look, I think this is a great initiative. I'd certainly like to see much more activity in that early evening up to 10 o'clock. And I think that would be welcome in all our areas. But one concern I did have was in relation to resident parking schemes and whether we need to review them in any areas. And so I'm putting up an amendment that we actually review the resident parking schemes in surrounding areas, mainly in relation to parking restrictions, whether they need to be extended to 10 o'clock from, I think most of them are till 6 o'clock. So that's the amendment I've sent through to Catherine. So it's just about the parking impacts on residents.
Councillor De Cruz, could that be incorporated into the Councillor Hesse's amendment about reviewing the policy after 12 months?
I think my concern was that if we're going to make these exempt, that the activity is exempt, that there'll be no signal to the community that this is happening, and I think that we might need to put it in parallel.
Right. Okay.
With the implementation of the planning proposal, I think, just to head off any issues, because I certainly know that around Newtown the parking restrictions are till 10 o'clock at night because I've given up driving and started catching the bus. But I think around Leichhardt it's till 6.
Yeah, no, I understand. Okay, well, I'm happy to accept both the amendments from Councillor Hesse and from Councillor De Cruz into the primary motion. Is there any further discussion, councillors?
I have a question.
Sorry, Councillor McKenna, yes.
Just a question to the officers. It talks about local centres. So I think places like Marketplace and Norton Street Plaza are considered local centres. So is this extend to small businesses within the centres, within those centres? Would they be included, or is it only like places on strips, on the strip centres in the street?
I'll put that question to the officers.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, hypothetically, yes, they would apply. So the provisions apply to all B2 zoned land in the LGA. What is critical in this space, perhaps, is that one of the requirements on the exempt development is that it not contravene any existing conditions of an active development consent. In relation to noise, parking, loading, unloading, vehicular movements, traffic generation, waste management, or landscaping. So that may be one factor that is relevant in that space. But yes, hypothetically, it would apply to those larger shopping centres.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Further discussion, councillors? There's no further discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against, is there anyone against? No, that has been carried. Next item. Nighttime Economy Action Plan. Councillors?
I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Do you wish to speak to it?
Nope.
Okay, I'm happy to second it. If there's no one who wishes to speak to the matter, I'll put it. All those in favour? All those against?
Question.
Oh, okay, sorry. I'll recommit that. Yes, Councillor Passos. Sorry, I can't hear you, Councillor Passos.
How would this work if there's a noise factor and people complain?
I'll put that question to the officers.
We closed down a hotel in Newtown recently, didn't we? They wanted extended hours and we didn't give it to them.
Sorry, Councillor Passos, can I just clarify the question? Is it about a specific component of the report?
I'll honestly say and admit I haven't read the report properly, but isn't this for night time for people to extend their hours to operate?
I'll put that question to the officers.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that was the previous item that we just dealt with. So item 4 was in relation to the extension of hours as part of the late night economy. What we're talking about now is the action plan itself that talks in much broader principles about activating our economy between the hours of 5 p.m. and midnight. So there's nothing that is deliberate in this particular item that would give rise to impacts on neighbouring residential premises, although it has been very well considered throughout both reports about how we moderate those particular acoustic and other types of impacts, and balancing those between our shopping strips and the neighbouring residential premises.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Liz. Yes, sorry, Councillor Passos.
It is, we are looking on both issues of extended hours. You hear me?
Yeah, this is an action plan, councillors. So what you've got before you is a list of 22 suggested actions that range from everything to do with minimising or enhancing the 40-kilometre an hour zones in particular precincts, down to continuing to support cultural activations in libraries, enhanced public art, wayfinding. So there's nothing in this particular report that would give rise to those sorts of impacts.
Okay, so I must have missed out. I've read two together, sorry. So we're looking to put in 40 kilometres an hour.
It has suggested as one of the actions that in partnership with Transport for New South Wales, introduce a 40 per hour speed limit in local streets across the LGA.
Well, I've raised this previously. We've never had a report or numbers from the police. How many people have attracted infringement notices for going over 50?
Sorry,
it's never.
Councillor Passos, are you still asking questions? Obviously, that's
no, it's all right. At the risk of being brought to order, I know the plan. I know what you're planning.
Okay, further discussion, councillors. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to the item? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against? Is there anyone who wishes to be recorded voting against it?
I'm against.
Councillor Passos is against. That has been carried. Next item, community gardens policy.
Could I move this one?
Yes, Councillor De Cruz.
Yeah, look, I'm very happy to move this community gardens policy, and thank you to the staff for clarifying the issues on insurance, on insurance items, and the community is very happy to engage in community gardens around the LGA. And I just heard recently that people in Leichhardt are getting together to renovate a community garden, and they seem to be happy with this new policy. So thank you to the staff for the preparation of it.
May I speak on this, please?
Yes, Councillor Passos.
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the officers, I'd like to know where we stand on theft of the vegetables or plants from the community gardens. It's been brought to my attention that people have been stealing the food. And where do we stand on this? And where could we get some legal advice on the law on this? Who are they stealing from? And can they be fined? Who owns the vegetables or whatever's been that's grown there?
I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that I think they're all questions that would have to be taken on notice, but I'll put them to the officers.
What did you say? It was a feral question?
No, I was saying I think that all have to be taken on notice, but I'll put that to the officers.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be my preference. My instinct is that they certainly don't belong to council through the deed. It would be my understanding that they belong to the group or the entity under which we have entered into the agreement.
Right, because I have complaints that the vegetables are being stolen and council has to do something about this. I said, I don't know if we can.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that question's been taken on notice. Is there any further discussion, councillors?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Stamoulis.
I'd like to second the motion if it hasn't already been seconded. And I'd like to say that this is a very good policy, and I'm involved and I've been involved in setting up a community garden at one of the Anglican churches in the Balmain ward, doing the heavy lifting, not much of the planting, unfortunately. They won't let me do that, but certainly doing some of the heavy lifting. But one thing I've found is the placement of that garden is such that it's very visible to the community. And every time I go past, people are looking at it. They've put signs on some of the herbs and whatever else they're growing there. And I'd like to think that that might become part of our policy in the future, having some community gardens that are quite easily accessible to look at and view as people go past on their walks, to identify the different herbs and plants that people are planting. But I won't add that as amendment, but I'd see that as a very positive aspect from what I've seen in the one that I've been involved in. Thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? I assume that's carried unanimously. Declare that carried. Next item, Local Traffic Committee.
I'll move that.
Moved by Councillor Stamoulis. Is there a seconder?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Passos. All those in favour?
No, I need to speak on something.
Oh, yes, sorry, go on.
Page 107, item 12, petition for improvements to the Edward Street, Summer Hill. And it has here that Councillor Macri tabled a petition from residents of the flour mills in Summer Hill. And the petition has requested improvements at the intersection of Edward Street, Mungo Scott Place and Wellesley Street to ensure visibility for vehicles, traffic calming on Edward Street, marked zebra pedestrian crossing on Edward Street, resealing of Edward Street road surface. Now, I would have thought, and I'm pretty sure, that the developers were supposed to reseal the street. So could we follow up on that? I remember that street was practically, it was destroyed while they were developing the flour mills. And could we follow up?
Mr. Mayor, what are we discussing?
We're
The
discussing
minutes of the Traffic Committee.
Item 12 in the Traffic Committee minutes, Councillor McKenna.
Oh, thank you.
Item 12. Now, I am pretty sure that the developers were the one that paid for the roundabout that's been put there in Edward Street and Smith Street. Could I have that clarified? And could our officers find out, is it the responsibility of the Mungo Scott developers to resurface that road? We've got enough roads to resurface.
I'll put that question to the officers. I'll put that question to the officers.
Through the chair, Mungo Scott is actually a private road, so it is the responsibility of developers to maintain that road. We council staff are currently in discussions with the developer about the signalisation of Edward Street. So that will be occurring. It's just a question of, will the developer be doing those works or will council be doing those works?
No, it's not Mungo Scott Road, it's Edward Street I'm talking about, a council street.
Oh, Edward Street is council's responsibility.
No, well, I'm pretty sure in the approval of that development that they were supposed to resurface that street.
Councillor Passos, I'll take that on notice and we'll double check that.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any further discussion, councillors? If not, I'll put the Stamoulis-Passos motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against, I presume that's carried unanimously. I declare that carried. Next item. That takes us into, we've adopted the financial statements, brings us to the investment report. Councillors?
I move that way.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Stamoulis. If there's no discussion, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Next item. Item 9, notice of motion from Councillor Stamoulis.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This is about the sort of monitoring that that council may do, and the question raises issues, I think, that could alarm most of us, possibly cause reputational damage to council if we don't get this right, and in some instances it might be illegal. Now, the sorts of issues that I'm raising in this motion, and I'd also like to thank the previous Mayor of Leichhardt Council, Councillor Moira Sheehan, for offering her contribution to this motion and in council getting these sorts of things right, because it brings to question things about trust, things about privacy, confidentiality, and these are some of the most basic rights of our staff, of all of our residents, and also our councillors. And some of the things that I think councillors have been discussing, our residents and our staff, send some disturbing messages and possibly confront the values of the Inner West Council itself. And I think we need to sort it out. We need to understand what the situation is, what common and good policy is, and what good standards are all about. We know that if there's issues of major difficulty and concern, fraud and corruption might be part of that, then monitoring should take place, and it would take place by appropriate authorities who are well skilled, who handle these sorts of things on a day-to-day basis. I wouldn't like to be the staff member in any organisation asked to do this. I think it would be a dreadful thing to ask staff members to do this sort of thing. We need to ensure that our practices are consistent with modern standards and what our community's values are, and also with what other councils do. The motion really asks for more information about this, probably in the hope of getting our settings right if they are wrong, but we need information back, a little bit of information back to find out what this is. We do need to get our settings right. We are a merged council. We're a big merged council. We don't want to be a big brother council.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. Is there a seconder for the motion?
I'll second it.
Yes, Councillor Passos.
Well, I would be the last person that knows about technology. I would, on the whole council. And there are a lot of problems, and all we hear about, all we have is confidentiality, confidentiality. This is cause of concern, and I am aware of a few instances. I won't go into it, but I have to support this motion. I also raised, I think about a year ago, about mail that was intercepted and held back. And may I say that the last couple of days, I've received deliveries which I'm really thankful for, which I haven't received for months. We really need to look into this. My husband doesn't even open my mail. And I really don't think it's anyone, any person has any right to open any mail that's been addressed to an individual person. This is cause of great concern. And a few recent incidents upset me very, very much. And I'm well aware that other councillors have the same concerns. And can councillors honestly say, put their hand on heart and say they really understand how this technology works? So we really need to have a report on this, maybe even go as far as bringing an expert in to see how our system is set up. I really don't believe there is one councillor that would be doing anything that's unlawful. I don't think we're given the opportunity with the way councils are set up now. So I can't understand why this type of thing has been happening, and we need to know why and how it can happen. So I will be voting for this motion.
Thank you for that. Further
Chair,
discussion?
if I might, Councillor Hesse.
Yes, Councillor Hesse.
Thanks, Chair. Through you, can I ask a question of the officers? I just wanted to clarify the report in the Sun Herald on Sunday. Are officers aware of any instances where electronic communications to councillors have been intercepted by staff? Thank you.
Councillor Hesse, I will put that question, but I am also very cognizant of the fact that were any of those issues actually to come up, that this is not an appropriate forum for it to be discussed within. So I'm going to put your question in principle, but I'm also going to try to just ensure that we don't go much further than that into
not proposing to do so.
I'll put that question to the officers.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, if I can start by being very clear about this, Council does not and has never actively monitored councillors' emails, telephone calls or correspondence. Our councillor emails are retained by council as we're required to do in a secure archival system. And as staff provided the response to the Sun Herald, no access has been granted to that councillor email archive since Inner West was established in 2016. If councillors would like, I can talk them through our robust internal systems and processes that we have in regards to accessing councillor or any emails that sit on our archive. But to be blunt and clear about it, no such access has ever been provided, and council does not actively monitor councillor emails.
Okay, thank you for that. That's a very concise and straightforward answer.
Indeed. Could I follow up, Councillor Byrne? Look, I do thank the Acting General Manager for her comments. So it's exactly as I would have believed it to be. I do have confidence in our senior staff, and I understand that there are reasons why some councillors will feel disaffected from some of the processes, but I don't believe that we need to look at the staff for our problems. I do believe, and I would suggest, and indeed I would ask councillors that really we leave this motion. In fact, I guess I'd request that it might even be withdrawn. I think this, the unintended consequences, I've no doubt, of this motion have been to cast staff in a very poor light, and I think that's very, very, very unfortunate. I'm sure that wasn't the intention. Because I do think that the problems we have, many of the problems we have on this council, apart from the amalgamation, are among us, and I think it's up to us to resolve those between ourselves, and we should really leave the staff out of it. So I would ask that this matter be withdrawn. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. Further discussion, councillors?
Can I speak, please, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councillor McKenna.
And I'd like to speak too.
Okay.
I think that this is a motion is extremely inappropriate. It actually has caused reputational damage to the council. I've had several people speak to me about it. It should not have been dealt with like this. If you really felt there was an issue, you should have raised it in another way. Putting a motion up like this is casting aspersions against our staff and suggesting that totally inappropriate behaviour is happening. It is totally unacceptable, and I could not possibly support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. Councillor De Cruz.
Yeah, look, as some of you might know, that I am in IT. I have many, many years ago managed email systems and realised that projection is something that people use when they accuse you of wanting to read everybody's email. And I'm very reassured by the Acting General Manager's comments that information is managed securely and the records are maintained as we are required to under the Records Act. But I'd also like to point out that I did actually ask in July 2019 that we undertake a privacy and a self-assessment of our privacy and information governance procedures, and that's gradually been coming back to us in briefing reports. I believe there's still some outstanding issues which involves training of staff, because privacy is a really, really significant issue, and it's perhaps tangential to what's being suggested here, but the issue of privacy, because council does have access to a lot of residents' information, to I guess staff information and council information to some degree, but resident information, and privacy should be a really, really important measure in council, and our residents need to feel confident that their privacy is being maintained. So I'd just like to say that I think we can't be totally 100% confident that we're doing the best, and that we do go back and perhaps the acting general manager acting general manager can look at the privacy reports and see how far we got with privacy and information governance, because information governance involves reporting to our community about the information and transparency of council. So I think there is a lot we could do a lot better in this area. Well, in the tangential area of managing our information, protecting the privacy of our residents, our councillors, our staff, and that kind of thing. So I've also expressed concerns that this motion actually did get on the papers, because it is of significant nature, and it probably shouldn't have been on the council papers. But I do think that we should take privacy and information governance very, very seriously, and including record management, because they are our obligations as government agencies, and they reflect whether our community has confidence in our operations. So I guess it's tangential. I find it's a little bit difficult about this, but I mean, perhaps
Councillor, your time has expired. Councillor, your time has expired.
Can I propose an amendment?
Yes.
Do I have time for an amendment?
Yep.
That Councillor Stamlis and Passos would consider an amendment that a report be brought back to council on the privacy and information governance procedures and of council. So simplifying this motion.
Councillor Stamlis?
The report is actually just on the procedures.
Yeah, I'd be happy to accept that as an alternative motion, in fact, Councillor Cruz.
Okay. So,
yeah, so it's on privacy and information governance. Privacy and information governance. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
That's now the primary motion. It's moved by Councillor Stamlis, seconded by Councillor Passos. The report be brought back to council on privacy information governance procedures of council. Further discussion, councillors? There's no further discussion. I'll go to Councillor Stamlis for his right of reply.
Yeah, look. There's no doubt in any area when we're discussing issues of this sort of nature that affect our staff, that affect our residents, and that affect our councillors. Defensive mode is always the first mode. It's always the first port of call is to go straight to defence rather than tackle the issues. We do have an issue. Councillors are aware of it. We send emails to each other. We've discussed it by email. We know we've had at least 4 incidents where mail hasn't come to us. Decisions have been made where mail hasn't come to councillors, at least 4. And we also know that a councillor has experienced monitoring of phone calls. Now, what I'm saying is let's get our settings right. Let's understand this as an issue to deal with and make sure that we respond to the values of our community and the values of modern business operations. Defence, of course, as I say, is the first port of call. What I'm saying is let's get these things right. If we don't get them right, we may be facing legal challenges in the future. So, councillors, I would trust that you'd want to get more information on this and get our standards and policies in accordance with proper practice. Thank you.
Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. In support, I have councillors Passis, Stamoulis, Steer, De Cruz, Macri. All those against, please raise your hands. Against, there is Councillor Hesse, Councillor Drury, Councillor McKenna, Councillor Raciti.
No, I'm for.
Oh, Councillor Raciti's for it. Sorry, my mistake. So Councillor McKenna, Councillor Lockie, Councillor Kiat, Councillor Iskander, and myself.
Mr. Mayor, are you for or against?
I'm against.
Oh, I find that surprising.
So I'll just
Very
do the
surprising.
count. So that for there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and against there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That has been defeated. Next item. We're almost at the end of the papers, councillors, so let's keep moving. Item 10, notice of motion, Whites Creek wetlands.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Simply asking for an update on what works are currently occurring at Whites Creek wetlands. Now, it's apparent that it's been completely drained. So I'm just wondering what the situation is there, because that hasn't occurred before from what I'm aware. So I'm just wondering whether one of the officers could explain that to us or whether they prefer to provide a report back. Thank you.
Can I put that question to the officers?
Through the chair, we'd prefer to provide a report back to council.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, is there a seconder for the motion? If there's no seconder, it will
Yeah,
wrap.
I'm happy to second the motion, and I might actually flag that I believe that there's 2 issues down at that park, and I'd be happy to receive a report back on it. One is the maintenance of the wetland, which requires the silt to be removed. And actually I had advice that that was being undertaken, but obviously that was the former general manager was responsible for that area. And the second issue is I understand that there were some people down there recently and that they're tagging the turtles, but I would be very interested to receive a proper report on what's happening with the Whites Creek wetlands. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So if there's no further discussion, I'll go to Councillor Stamoulis for a right of reply.
No, that's fine. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Is there anyone against? Okay, that has been carried unanimously. Next item. Parking on the Princess Highway.
Yes, thanks, Chair. It's just regarding there's a group of businesses that are in a mixed-use development, and they're on the Princess Highway, and around them they have all-time parking. So what happens is a lot of the construction workers that are working on the WestConnex and people that are going into the city basically park there all day, and it's really out of kilter with all of our shopping strips not to have time parking, so the businesses can get turnover. There's an aquarium, there's a vet, you know, sometimes they have to carry animals in that are injured. If you can't get parking, it's very difficult for those businesses to survive. Now, we put it forward at the Traffic Committee, and we've hit a bit of a brick wall with the Transport for New South Wales. They don't seem to be too interested. So I'm just trying to get a bit more sort of action here by, if we send them a letter from the Mayor and the Council, just alerting them to what their inaction is actually affecting the viability of these businesses at the worst possible time. If that's supported, it's as simple as that.
Pleased to second that, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Hesse.
Sorry, I was on mute. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor?
No, I think Councillor Macri said all that needs to be said, and I strongly support the motion.
Okay, does anyone wish to speak
Can I
against
just
it?
say something quickly?
I would like to say something.
Who are you saying yes to?
I've got Councillor Lockie, then Councillor Passos.
No, it's just a very quick, I just wanted to thank Councillor Macri for taking this up. I know he's been in very active contact with the businesses down there and has gone out to visit the site and so forth and advocated very strongly for them. They do really need this. It's such a simple solution. I'm staggered that we're getting a brick wall from Transport for New South Wales, so thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Passos?
Yes, doesn't the Traffic Committee have a rep from Transport of New South Wales on it?
Yes, it does.
Well, what's he doing? What's the Traffic Committee doing?
There's just lack of response from them.
Why? But does he attend the meetings? Why hasn't he come back with something?
She.
Well, why haven't you worked on her? Why hasn't she come back with something?
Point of order, Mayor. Point of order.
Why is it a point of order?
We have raised the council.
Point of order. It is not for questions backwards and forwards. When it's permitted to make a speech. However, the constant questioning backwards and forwards is not in accordance with the Code of Meeting Practice, as Councillor Passos really fully well knows.
Would you like another warning because you know what's happened to you? That's why you want me.
Sorry, councillors. Councillor Drury, his point of order is correct. That
it is not correct because other councillors asked the same questions and repeat questions.
Councillor Passos, sorry.
Can I suggest a further warning for Councillor Passos?
Yeah, I will if she doesn't desist. Councillor Passos, I was just pointing out, as Councillor Drury was, that you're not allowed to badger Councillor Macri or berate him.
I was not badgering Councillor Macri.
I'll call the meeting to order. Councillor Macri, do you wish to make a right of reply?
I'll just say, Chair, the representative for Transport New South Wales on the committee has taken it back, and it just seems to hit an impasse. It's not high on their list of priorities. That's what the issue is, and it is a priority for these local businesses. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against, is there anyone who wishes to be recorded voting against it?
Yes, I'm against, because if our Traffic Committee can't do anything, why do we have the committee?
Councillor Passos is against the motion. It has been carried. That brings us to the two items in confidential session. So I'll move that we move into confidential session, seconded by Councillor Drury. All those in favour, against, declare that carried. Catherine, could you please let me know once the public display has been turned off?
Will do.